Okay, we're going to start this evening with the County Commissioners meeting. Chair McNabb.
Well, good evening, everyone. The June 5th meeting of the County Commissioners is now open. Our first agenda item is election of officers. So do I have a nomination for chair?
I would nominate Tom Dixon.
Okay, all in favor of Tom Dixon by roll call, because we have someone out there. Don Holgate.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Former chairman says aye. Congratulations. The rest is yours.
Let me bring it up.
We need a vice chair.
You need a vice chair. Oh, right.
Thank you, Malcolm. Open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'd nominate Dr. McNabb.
Second. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Matt Fee, Aye. Don Holgate,
Aye.
chair votes aye. That passed unanimously. Malcolm, vice chair. Move on to public comment. Is there anybody here tonight or online for items not on our agenda who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I just make one announcement?
Yes,
Just
sir.
a reminder that it is sort of county business and not town business, that based on Mr. Williams' warrant, the county commission has sent a note to our representatives about having a housing court on Nantucket. So we thank Mr. Williams for that. We hopefully will hear some response.
that's a good point. That did come up at the end of our select board meeting,
Yeah.
but that's good to bring up actually in county commissioners, so thank you. There is no new business that I know of. Move on to approval of minutes and warrants. Entertain a motion for approval of minutes.
So
And
moved.
payroll and treasury warrants.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Next up is official business citizen requests. First up, we have a request for approval and execution of order of alteration and layout of Waitt Drive, previously shown as Lot 80 on plan entitled, quote, being a division of Lot 76 on Land Court Plan 37902-C, now shown as lots 79, 80, and 81 to be taken as public way, division of roadway, layout and plan in Nantucket, Massachusetts, et cetera, and as noted in our packet. I think we have the real estate specialist for the town and county on to open this item. Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. So this plan was originally laid out for Waitt Drive as Plan 2016-58, and it ran from Ticcoma Way and sort of dead-ended into a cul-de-sac you see at the end there. Subsequently, the town acquired a parcel on Amelia Drive that enabled the ability to connect the road to Amelia Drive, allowing for a better traffic flow. The planning staff has suggested the alteration and discontinuance of the cul-de-sac. Therefore, I'm requesting the county commissioners execute the order of alteration and approve the disposition of the lots noted in your packet for the current configuration and new layout on Plan 2024-10. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there any questions from the commissioners or any comments? I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion moved by Bat, seconded by Malcolm. By roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Dr. McNabb,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. That is passed unanimously. Thank you, Tracy, for covering
you.
that. Next up, we have commissioners' reports and comments. Any commissioners with reports or comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the county commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Dawn,
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, that we are adjourned. I'll pass it over to Chair of the Select Board, Brooke Moore.
Okay, I'm going to call the June 5th Select Board meeting to order at 5:36 p.m. First, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to remember Ken Beaugrand, who gave years of service to the community through his chairmanship of the CPC, his work as the real estate specialist. We lost Mr. Beaugrand last week, and if we could have a moment of silence in remembrance of him at this time. Thank you. Okay, next up is acceptance of the agenda. We have one change in section 10. We'll be swapping items 1 and 2. So number 2 will come first and number 1 will come second. Other than that, we'll accept the agenda as printed unless anyone has any other comments. No, okay. Announcements, Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded, and hopefully the finance director is online, and he's going to give us an update on our short-term rental registration program. Brian?
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a brief update. As most people are aware on the board, we hired Process First to help work out some issues that we were encountering with GovOS and the rollout. The first thing I would like to note is that as of today, there has been 79 rental registrations that have been completed through the platform. There are 159 registrations that the health department needs to go through and review and then finish the activation on them. Process First is working through some of the issues that were raised by various groups and interested individuals within the community. We are in the process of eliminating the requirement if you have a caretaker managing your property. We're removing the requirement to upload the contract. It became extremely overly cumbersome to do and somewhat difficult to accomplish. So there's going to be a certification that if you have one, you'll be, I believe there's going to be a certification relative to that, along with making sure to provide the contact information for the caretaker. Another note that had been brought up was insurance, uploading the insurance into the registration platform. We've changed that to a certification that you either have the insurance that meets the bylaw requirements or are participate in a platform, either VRBO, Airbnb, or any one of the other platforms that do maintain coverage that has been extended to you, which meets or exceeds the thresholds in the bylaw. Process First is working through some payment issues with Stripe. Our treasurer, Melinda Ernst Fournier, has also been involved. We were trying to only accept credit cards to make the process go smoother and not have to touch checks and things or deal with online payments from checks. Stripe, the payment processor, inadvertently turned on e-checks. It has caused e-checks have caused a few issues that we're trying to work through, and we're trying to ultimately turn off e-checks and be only accepting credit cards. There's a couple other minor issues that they are working through in terms of registrations on the platform. The biggest issue I think that we're working on right now is myself and Process First have worked on identifying and reformatting the last rental registry that we had received from the Commonwealth. It's been reduced down to only the necessary data fields that has been sent to GovOS, and they are currently matching that against the 900 letters that they had sent out when they did their scrape of the websites. My expectation is we're probably going to find another 1,400 to 1,500 based on our initial analysis of individuals that should have received a letter. And then we're working through the process of getting those letters mailed out to all of those individuals that are identified as not receiving one in the first round of registration requests and information. So it's been very, I will say this, it's been very good having Process First be the main point of contact on the issues. They've been working diligently with the health department and then bringing myself or any of my staff necessary in as we're going through it. So there's been some hiccups in the rollout, as we all know, but I think with Process First help, we're going to get this smoothed out.
Thanks,
So I'm
Brian.
happy to entertain any questions from the board at this point, Madam Chair.
Any questions? Okay, seems like there aren't any. Thanks for the update, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, just an announcement about our Nantucket Offshore Wind Community Fund Grant Awards. This is the first year of these grant awards. As you know, this is results from the Good Neighbor Agreement. I'm just going to read what they are. They also are all listed in pending contracts because they are going to be grant award contracts. We have a number of, and Vince can probably answer this if need be, but a number of agencies applied. Not everybody got approved for the funding, but the ones that did are as follows. Cemetery Commission and DPW to develop a historic colored cemetery walking tour video, and that is a grant award of $25,000. Culture and Tourism received $28,164 to develop a phone app for a walking tour called Visit Widget. DPW got a grant award for solar panels on the Nobodere Fieldhouse for $25,000, plus received $25,000 for historic properties survey plan, a couple more solar projects, solar sewer department, solar on the Surfside Road pump station, $20,000, solar on the office building at the water company, $50,000, and the town and the land bank jointly applied for about a $50,000 grant for Washington Street Resilience Planning Public Outreach, and we'll split that accordingly. And I wanted to just mention that a lot of work has gone into this, and Matt, you've been at this at the beginning. There was a lot of hard work that brought these offshore wind benefits to the community, and a lot of people who kind of came and went throughout the process, including David Worth. Rita Higgins was one of our original select board members who was advocating for this. Others along the way include Holly Backus, Stephen Welch, Denise Cronow, Matt, Maureen Phillips. This was kind of an original wind work group who helped secure the local mitigation with our special counsel cultural heritage partners. Mary Bergman and CF Nan, who we collaborated with to create the grant fund with CF Nan. And Jeremy Bloomer, Mary Bergman again, Niles Parker, Christian Hoffman, and of course, Lauren Sinatra, who has put much effort into this. And more recently, Vince Murphy, our sustainability program coordinator, has as well. So really, a lot of thanks goes to them. Lauren had the original ideas going back as far as 2018 for a fund along these lines, and it has materialized into what we see today. So thank you all for that. That's just a little community.
You know, Libby, I'm glad that you read the names. I was trying to think about it, but I was going to miss half of them, so thank you. And people did do a lot of work and still are doing a lot of work to try to push this the right way. Thank you.
I think on the next announcement, Eric is going to read. Are you going to read those? Or we moved that. Oh, we moved that. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That's it for mine.
Okay, any select board comments or announcements? Nobody? Okay, well, I have one. I've been asked by the transportation director to announce the launch of a voluntary labeling program for e-bikes and a sticker program for what's being called the Brain Bucket Nantucket. So the idea is it's going to be similar to a beach sticker where there'll be a new color issued every year, and we can all add them sequentially on our bike helmets. So when I saw this, I was like, what's a brain bucket? it's our bike helmet or the helmet we wear on a scooter. And so the idea is really to encourage helmet use, both in children and adults. And this is the brainchild, a combination of Peter Burke at the Chamber, Mike Burns, with help from Florencia and our communications department in the design work on all of this. And we really want to encourage people to be safe and wear a helmet. I was joking that it's part of my marriage vows, for better or for worse, and only if you wear a bike helmet. So I do, and I hope others will as well. And the other part of this is a labeling for e-bikes. We've had a lot of conversations in the community about what are the types of e-bikes and how do we know which one is which and where it belongs in our roadways. And I just wanted to give everyone a little summary that Mike helped me remember, that Class 1, which are pedal assist only, no throttle, and they have allowable speeds up to 20 miles an hour, and Class 2, which can be pedal assist plus a throttle, but also with a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour, are named in the state code, and they are allowed to be ridden on multi-use paths that are paved, but they are not allowed to be used on natural surface paths. So that's Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes. And basically, they require you to pedal. And then what seems to be the most controversial type of e-bike in the community is Class 3, which is a throttle only. So you don't have to be pedaling. It's more like a little mini bike, honestly. And they're much faster, and they have maximum speeds of 28 miles an hour. These are not permitted on our bike paths. And I think that it's important that the community know this. And what we're asking people to do is voluntarily add one of these stickers so that it's obvious to people who are seeing you on the bike path. For me, it would be to be able to say to someone, nope, I'm not a Class 3, I'm a Class 1. And also just to be able to identify. And it's really about education and outreach. And it's to start developing a culture around the use of e-bikes in the community and to improve safety in this regard. And Mike, do you have any other comments?
Just that you said it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. And then I would say that these are available at, the bike helmet ones are available at the Chamber. And the Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 are available at the police department, at the bike shops, and
The bike helmet stickers are available at the Chamber of Commerce, at the Visitor Center.
Right, sorry.
And at the Sheriff's Office, and at the Nantucket Police Station. The e-bike stickers, the bike shops are voluntarily using them for their rentals. Some have already put them on, and they will be available through the police department at the time of bike registration. Or if you just want to pick one up, they will eventually be there.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for this effort. This conversation was hot a while back, and then it's kind of subsided. But I think the idea is to start with education outreach and community involvement and changing the culture. And then we'll be investigating if there's further regulations required. So,
And one of the things, you have brought up something. When a friend of mine was riding his regular bike and got clipped by an e-bike a few days ago, he was fine. The e-bike person was fine. But the e-bikes are silent. And they have to, when they come up behind somebody, they are flying sometimes. They have to be aware and say something or hit a horn or do something, because you don't hear them. And, it could have been, a couple inches more one way or the other, and it could have been a serious accident. So I think our paths are thin and these things are going pretty fast. People need to pay attention. So.
and I'll add to that I use my e-bike a lot, actually, and I try to warn with a ring, with voice, and I indicate what side. If someone's walking on the left side of the bike path, I'll say on your right. And if they're walking on the right side, I'll say on your left. And I yell it pretty loud, and sometimes I get nothing because people have loud music in double earbuds, and there's not much I can do about that. But certainly as a bike rider, I can facilitate less fear-inducing and jump-inducing quick drive flybys, even on my pedal assist bike. So, Erica?
I just hope that our locally licensed pedicab company has those on their bicycles too.
I'm sure everybody will want to participate in this. And anybody in the audience, if you rode your bike here or you have a bike helmet and you want to play along, there are some stickers in the back. Just feel free to help yourself. I mean, we do want people to grab these and participate in the safety culture.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it was about the short-term rental regulations. Why don't we allow her, Brian's still on, let's allow Kathy to ask her question because I missed it.
Oh, thank you very much. So the question was, thank you so much, by the way, for addressing the issues that were brought up, and it should be a lot simpler going forward. Still, the question is, if I sign up today and I register my STR, I understand what you get is a certificate that expires in December of 2024. So basically, it's a registration for this year. But the bylaw says that by November 1st of 2024 is when you have to register for 2025. So how will the system know when you're registering for this year versus next year? That's really one question. And then also, I just to follow up on the insurance certification, having you check a box instead of uploading. I think that's great. If you have both kinds of policies, you have a platform one and personal one, can you check both boxes, or is it just a one or the other?
Okay. Kathy, we'll pass those questions. Brian, are you ready to answer them now, or shall I just say we're passing them along to you guys and you'll get back to us?
No, the insurance question, it's just a certification that you maintain the insurance. So I don't think it's not going to distinguish between the two. We could talk to them about distinguishing between the two, but the bylaw, I believe, simply lays out that you have to have the liability coverages within the bylaw. So the certification would just certify that you have those certifications either through a hosting platform or through your own insurance that you carry on your home personally. The question about differentiating the date, I think, is something that I just wrote down because it's something we have to talk to GovOS about due to the timing of the rollout, how that will be managed in the most efficient and effective way. So I'll have to provide the board through the town manager an answer to that after we have another meeting with GovOS.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, we don't have any follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. This is the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there any, I see Stephen Welch coming to the mic, and then I have two hands online.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Stephen, just one second.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
a reminder, we have a three-minute limit for public comment.
I hope to be all of about 30 seconds or less. Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board. Stephen Welch, Capital Program Chair. Speaking on behalf of Capital Programming, we are currently in the process of finalizing our schedule for the budget season. Initial portion of that revolves around new members becoming involved early to rank criteria within our capital program database. So I'm trying to work that into the schedule. Happen to be here for another matter later in the evening. I sent Erica an email yesterday. I don't want to jump over that, but I'm curious if you can tell me when you will be assigning your representative to Capcom.
Next week.
Excellent, thank you. Oh, and by the way, fully support, Michael, that's a wonderful idea with the brain bucket. Recently having suffered a head injury, thinking about just getting one of those stickers and putting on my jean jacket.
Thanks, Stephen. Bill Greeter online?
Thank you. I wanted to bring a safety concern to the board's attention. Shortly after the rebuild of the Walter Barrett Pier last fall, the dual streetlight on the dock stopped functioning. I called National Grid to report the outage. A crew was dispatched, and their inspection revealed that it wasn't a bulb failure, but rather a line failure. Apparently, the underground cable from the pull box to the riser pole is compromised. To resolve the failure, evidently contracting crew is needed to inspect / repair the underground conduit and wiring. According to the National Grid spokesman, this responsibility for that project is the town of Nantucket. Supposedly, the town's been notified of the issue months ago, but to date, there hasn't been any repair work. Activity at the boat ramp and dock has already started to increase. Nighttime on the dock is a safety event waiting to happen. There's also been an increase in late night non-boating activity at the dock. And as my mother often said, nothing good happens after midnight. So rather than me trying to track down if National Grid contacted the town or who they contacted, I thought it best to bring it to your attention before the next thing on the agenda is dealing with an incident that happened because of darkness. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Meredith Lepre?
Hi, thank you so much. I just was wondering, somebody told me that they saw the fire department going to a call that was an emergency call this week, and they were wearing all their gear. And that's super concerning to me because I think that they're trying to wear their gear only when necessary because of the potential for PFAS exposure. And also with how hot it is, I'm sure that they were sweating, which just increases the exposure to them. So that really concerns me for the safety of our fire department. And I just didn't know if anyone had information on that, because I think that they probably should only be wearing their gear when absolutely necessary so that they don't unnecessarily expose themselves and increase their risk of cancer due to working for the town of Nantucket. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. Okay, there's no new business. Next up is
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm
Miss
sorry,
Warren.
Campbell. I was
No,
looking
no
down.
worries.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Just your name for the record.
Campbell Sutton. Hi, all. I just had a couple of things I wanted to mention. I really appreciate the paving that's been done in front of the high school and Cyrus Pierce Middle School, because that road was so, I mean, I get my tie rods replaced every 2 years because of our road conditions. So I was really appreciative of that. I also, on the other hand, have a bit of a concern that the extension of the pavement has reduced the size of what is a multi-use path, or originally a bike path, to about a sidewalk. And we're headed into a really busy season on Surfside Road with all that you just mentioned: scooters, electric bikes, walkers, runners, you know, the whole gamut. And I'm concerned that with no demarcation, right, which there's no demarcation, that cars will feel, and trucks especially, will feel very comfortable taking up a nice portion of the road, and that interface could be dangerous. So that's one of my concerns. Another one that seems trite, but I'm seeing it start to spread, and this is the idea that public property or multi-use paths or the median between them is somehow a parking lot. And like, I get it on private roads where, you know, there's difficulty of enforcement because it's a private road, so it's up to the homeowners association to deal with it. But on public roads that the police are driving down, I guess I'm not sure why it is that someone from the area has to call the police to get it enforced, when it seems like the police driving by can see that it's an infraction. And, you know, I don't care if it just says this is not a parking lot or it's a warning, not asking for huge fines, but I think, again, before the summer season gets started in full swing and these small examples become larger examples and we start seeing it everywhere, I think it'd be in the town's best interest and in community's best interest to have it sort of on the police force's agenda versus having to make people policing by calling the police in. So one of the other things I had on my mind, 2 weeks ago when you met, you were talking about how to educate or bring more information to people, and a number of you were mentioning how important it is to, maybe give reasons or explain why you guys are for a particular article or a particular course of action, right? That then has to be voted on or people have an opinion on. And, in my experience, I think if you could also think about, well, why should I vote for it? Why should I support it as a citizen, right? Because you know why you're doing it, and that might be helpful. Okay, that's why they're doing it, but why should I want that as well? So I think to maybe think of these things from that perspective will help you present information in a more complete way. The other thing is sort of building off something that Matt and Hillary had said 2 weeks ago. Ideas are not, there are bad ideas, but in general, ideas don't have to be bad. And just because people have different ideas about something doesn't mean that they should be restricted from participating, which is sort of what I see as a habit of the board, is to just choral singers, and you get this great group thing
Campbell,
going.
you're coming up against time.
Okay. And
Wrap up.
but you get my idea. You get this great group think thing, and then you bring it to the public, and the public's like, well, no, I'm not for that. And I think, again, we need to be more inclusive, not just in color and culture, but in ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Campbell.
I know we don't usually respond to.
No, we don't.
I had one thing that I was hoping to just respond to, and that's the Surfside Road, because it's
Oh,
it's
from an
something for
operations
the-
point of view.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So Ms. Sutton had a concern about the pavement on Surfside Road and the fact that there's no demarcation for the bike path. That is going to be rectified this Friday, I am told. So it was a concern of mine as well, and I have reached out to everybody, and the lines are supposed to be done on Friday.
Great. Thanks, Erica.
It's like magic.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm seeing no other public comment. Now we move on to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. We happy to take them all together, and do I have a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb?
Aye.
Don Holgate?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That's unanimous. Okay, citizen departmental requests, Cobo Utility Construction Corp. request for waiver of town noise bylaw from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., and as the rest is written, from June 12th through June 26th at 6 Broad Street to repair electric manhole structure. Erica?
Thank you. So I was hoping that somebody from COBA would be here, but they're probably still working. This is an electrical manhole right in front of Young's Bike Shop. The structure itself is starting to collapse, and the idea is to get it done now, which I know is going to be a little bit of an inconvenience, but it's better than to wait until it becomes an emergency this summer. The noise bylaw is currently 7 a.m. it starts, or you can start work at, and then as of June 15th at 7:30. They would like to do the work at 5 a.m. so they can avoid all that morning boat traffic and to really just try to alleviate the impacts to traffic throughout the day.
Okay, thanks,
So-
Erica. Any questions or the pleasure of the board?
I'll move.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. By roll call, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That's unanimous. Next up, 2 requests from the airport. Mr. Carberg and Mr. Turbot, I think, are going to handle this together, right?
Thank you. Noah Carberg, Airport Manager. Brian did a really good job introducing this at FinCom yesterday, so maybe we can run the same playbook.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first request that you have before you is a request to increase the fuel revolver cap. Erica, do you have the AIS that you can put up by chance?
Just give me 1 sec.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So the request before you is to increase the fuel revolver cap from 8.8 million, from 6.9 million to 8.8 million. We have come before the select board previously in prior fiscal years to ask for this increase. As you know, that we are, as noted in the AAF, we are trying to budget and predict fuel expenditures at least a minimum of 15 months in advance. Statutorily, under the rules for the revolving accounts, this can be increased provided that the select board and the FinCom both agree and vote in the to do this. I would note to the board that the FinCom did approve this last night. This will ensure with this increase that the airport can continue to pay any of the fuel for any of the fuel deliveries needed between now and the end of the fiscal year. So we're asking for a positive motion to allow this increase.
Okay, any questions from the board? The pleasure.
Move approval?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, that's unanimous. And request number 2 regarding borrowing authorization for a capital project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this request before you is the first time that we have had to ever utilize this, but as a very brief summary, the 2021 annual town meeting approved a home rule petition article to be sent to the legislature, Article 94, which within that article made changes to the town's bylaws that allowed the select board to approve a borrowing authorization for grant purposes for capital expenditures in the event that the airport had the ability to receive a grant, but due to the timing of the annual town meeting or a special town meeting, did not allow us to begin to accept the grant and then begin the project. We have a situation here that the airport manager will be able to take you through regarding continued environmental monitoring. The FAA has notified the airport that there is a grant available through the AIP program. There's a limited window of time to accept the grant, which necessitates the need to use the home rule petition that was approved to allow the select board to authorize a borrowing. One note, the way that the home rule petition was set up is that the airport commission first has to approve this. We did take it to the FinCom last night. It's not a requirement, but they did endorse this after a discussion. It requires the select board's approval to utilize this. And then the last step is that it does require advertisement in the paper, which allows for 15 days for a citizen to submit a warrant article with 15 signatures, or it has to be advertised for 15 days. And then a citizen can object to this by submitting a warrant article for vetoing this and then asking for it to be put on the annual or special town meeting. So should you vote to do this tonight, it does not guarantee this will happen because there is the 15-day advertising period as noted. As I did mention, the airport commission has voted favorably. The FinCom did vote favorably last night, and this will help the airport get a grant to continue the environmental monitoring project, excuse me. I would note that the grant is will fund 95% of the project, 90% from the federal government and 5% from the state, which would leave a 5% share, or roughly about $20,000 based on the breakdown of the grant and the cost.
Thank you. Noah, do you have anything to add?
I have a presentation prepared. It's in the packet. I can go through it quickly, or I can just answer questions or refer to it if there are
Let's see if
questions.
anybody wants more information before we take the time for that.
I'm fine, and I can't imagine that anyone would oppose this because it's for, it's, even people who have been not happy with the airport now want this grant to happen, because it's all for good things. So I don't see anyone opposing it. I hope they won't. So I move approval.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, that's unanimous. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Next up, housing office requests, and I'm just going to have the housing director, Christy Ferrantella, who's with us online, take it from here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first request in front of you tonight is a request for authorization for funding for a grant to Housing Nantucket. This is for their house recycling program, and they'll be moving a one-bedroom house from Dukes Road over to their parcel at 66 Pochick Ave, and then converting this one bedroom into a two-bedroom unit. This will serve our year-round community as part of their rental program. And Housing Nantucket is requesting a grant of up to $450,000 to assist in covering the cost of the move and the renovations and upgrade to a two-bedroom. The Affordable Housing Trust unanimously approved this at their April 30th meeting. So I'd ask that you vote to approve the spending and for me to work with Town Council on the grant agreement and to be signed by either the chair or vice chair.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from the board? A motion?
Move approval. Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt Fee.
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That is unanimous. Next up, Richmond.
Thank you. So there's a second request. It's a request for authorization for funding for a grant to Richmond Development. And this is to buy down the affordability of 12 market rate units, which is part of their Gooseberry Place development. This is phase 5 and 6 of their rental development, in which they're creating 55 units of rentals. In the current project, only 25% of those would be restricted at 80%. And in this buy down grant, the trust would be purchasing and buying down 12 of those market rate units down to units restricting income up to 120%. So it'd be adding more levels of affordability to this development. In doing this, we would be amending their application to the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities, which would make the units available to be included on the SHI list and would be eligible for safe harbor. So the trust has been working on this as our plan B from Ticcoma Green to keep us in safe harbor at the end of this year. As I mentioned, this is a 55 unit development and we need 62 units for safe harbor for 2 years. So we'll be combining these units with the homeownership opportunities that they have at Sandpiper Place 2, and then the homeownership opportunities that Habitat is currently developing at Waitt Drive. So all 3 of these projects combined give us the SHI units up to 62 units that we'll need to stay in safe harbor. In addition to the buy down, part of the proposal is that there would be a master lease between the town and Richmond for the town to lease between 5 and 15 units for municipal use. And these would be units that are market rate units. So municipal employees can still apply and be part of the lottery on the restricted units. And these would be additional units that would be available to the town. I've worked with town administration, and the housing department has reviewed our employees' housing needs. And we would be recommending the select board secure 10 of these units, with a majority of those being 1 and 2 bedroom for municipal use. So the trust unanimously approved this grant at their April 30th meeting and is working closely with Richmond on this project to keep us in safe harbor. It has been reviewed by bond counsel and is still being reviewed by the financial advisors. So I would recommend approving this grant agreement and funding contingent on approval from our financial advisors and to approve the request to negotiate with Richmond on the 10 units for municipal use. And I'm happy to answer any questions. That was a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. It's a little bit of a complex deal. So any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I would just note that this is a long process that Christy, and going back all the way to Tucker, has put a lot of work into this with a lot of moving parts. And this seems a very good outcome to building out these units and getting them on the SHI list.
Yep.
And at these AMI levels.
And I would agree, and also getting the opportunity for us to get some municipal employee housing that we desperately need. So Any other questions or comments from the board? Do I have a motion?
I motion contingent upon financial review, as stated by Christie.
Okay. Christie, is there anything else you have in
Second.
that motion? Yep, and Don second, okay. Okay, by roll call, Malcolm,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Plan B, that's great.
Thank
Next up,
So the next thing on the agenda is related to this gooseberry buy down. Richmond needs to now go back to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and amend their local initiative program, their LIP application. This part of the process is what would make the units eligible to be included on our SHI list and eligible for a safe harbor. So I just request that you approve this amended LIP application so Richmond can submit it for review and begin their lottery for those additional income restricted units. I'd also recommend authorizing the chair to sign any, or vice chair to sign any additional documents that may arise in this buy down project to secure safe harbor.
okay, any questions or comments from the board?
Motion to approve and authorize the chair or vice chair to sign.
Do I have a
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That is unanimous.
And just a comment, at some point, I'm sure you guys have this, or the Affordable Housing Trust has it, but at some point, I would like to see a per unit cost. How much is it? How much have we subsidized Richmond? You know, how many units have we received? How is that going to compare to doing it other ways going forward? At some point, I think we should see, sort of what this has all cost us as a community. So, thank you.
So Christie, I guess the request would be, and when you give us our next update from the housing office, that might be an opportune time to add
Yeah.
that calculation for us, that analysis.
Yeah, we moved a house tonight. It was 5-something
Yeah.
to move it and get a 2-bedroom, and we know what the cost for Ticcoma was, land plus 300, whatever it was per unit. So I'd like to see what are we doing there and sort of try to be comparing, apples to apples as we go forward.
Excellent, okay. One more, Christie?
Yes. So the last request this evening is to approve and execute the regulatory agreement. And this is a document for Habitat for Humanity's project on Waitt Drive. As I just mentioned previously, they're building 6 homes for home ownership. And they've begun their lottery for 4 of these units. So this agreement is a routine request to approve a regulatory agreement between the town, Habitat, and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And this agreement ensures that the units will remain affordable and stay on our SHI list. So I'd recommend approving this agreement, and I'll work with town council to have the final comments resolved and put forth to the EOHLC.
Questions or comments, a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I have a thought, Christie, if you don't mind, could you remind everybody the lotteries that are open for affordable units currently, just as to remind the community?
Absolutely. So Housing Nantucket has a lottery right now for 22 units of affordable rentals over at Wiggles Way. 6 of those are restricted at 80% of AMI, and the additional units go up to 150% AMI. They'll be pulling the lottery in mid-July, but if you go on their website, it's very easy to see which category you might qualify for, or if you overqualify, what their other programs are. There's also a lottery for Habitat for Humanity for their development on Waitt Drive. They have 4 single-family homes that are 2 and 3 bedrooms, and those are all restricted to the 80% AMI level, and that will be running concurrently. Their dates line up very similarly, but till about mid-July for Habitat and the beginning of July for Housing Nantucket.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up is a request for select board review of planning board major commercial development special permit condition of easement for public sidewalk being shifted onto private property to accommodate the installation, construction, maintenance, and operation of improvements shown on a plan caption proposed drop-off exhibit. Who is
Good evening, Madam Chair. Michael Wilson. And members of the
I think
board.
we're going to have someone,
Leslie is here,
Yeah,
the planning director, and she's just going to review the special permit first.
thanks.
Hi, Leslie Snell, Director of Planning. I didn't know I was giving a presentation first, so I'm sorry, I'm not quite prepared. But the Planning Board issued a special permit for this project known as the Brant back in 2022. It was reviewed at a lot of public hearings. It was actually reviewed twice by the Planning Board. There was a lot of discussion by the board and the property owner and the surrounding property owners about access to the site. There was a lot of concern about pickup and drop-off and impacts to abutting properties, particularly Dolphin Court. The property owners asserted that they had rights to use Dolphin Court. The neighbors next door were concerned that they would bring too much traffic down Dolphin Court, which is a quiet residential street. So as a compromise, and the planning board actually thought this was a better solution, they worked out an agreement with the applicant to come to you to construct this pull-off off of North Beach Street. The pull-off would allow any driver, Uber drivers, cab drivers, to drop people off outside of the public way so that the traffic isn't stopped, so that there aren't impacts to congestion that may already be in the area. The sidewalk is proposed to be reconstructed, which you can see on the plan. The transportation program manager at the time reviewed this and was very supportive of the solution. The planning board thought this was a good idea and it really addressed everyone's concerns. So I would ask that you support the recommendation of the planning board and accept this easement and sidewalk reconstruction and pull off on the side of North Beach Street.
And I just want to note, tonight is not when you're actually doing any acceptance of anything. This is just to review the concept of this with you, and then we'll bring it back if you're in favor of it.
Okay, thanks, Erica. Mike, did you want to?
I think Leslie captured that. Don Bracken is on in the event there's any questions with respect to the engineering component of it. The proposal is to utilize the existing and then supplement with whatever the same type of bricks for the relocation of the sidewalk. It's about 246 square feet of relocated sidewalk space. And I think it would certainly smooth out the traffic flow down there on North Beach Street. I'd ask the board to consider it favorably. Working with town council, we've already presented to them a draft of the easement plan as well as the easement language.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Matt?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One is, how will it be signed? Will it say no parking or taxis only, or what's the, is this gonna, how is it gonna be signed so it doesn't turn into a private parking space or a permanent parking space? That's number one.
I would defer to the transportation department, but I think we could put taxi drop-off or drop-off only, or.
Yeah, I mean, I know how critical, I know how greedy people are with parking.
Something similar to a NERDA bus sign, something
All right.
low-key that would just identify it not as a parking spot.
So I believe any signage there would need a recommendation from the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
Okay.
So they would need to review that.
And then my other question, has HDC or Historical Commission reviewed this? And my concern on that is, if this starts to become what we do, are we going to have little bump-ins all over downtown? And what will that do to the historic built environment? So I would like to see have they been consulted?
This was part of the planning board's major commercial development approval.
Right.
And I have not put it before the Historic District Commission, but if this type of structure requires a building permit that would require HDC approval, certainly we'll need to seek that and secure it.
I thought that it was actually reviewed under their site plan for hardscaping, or am I wrong? Okay, Holly is saying yes.
So this has been reviewed and approved, Holly? Yeah, I'm trying to avoid us saying yes to something and then being told that we're the dumbest board ever because we didn't think about it, so.
Yes, this project did come before the HDC.
Okay.
Malcolm?
I need some time to think. About I just need some time to think. I don't want to vote tonight or anything.
Hi, Rita Carr, Vice Chair of the Historical Commission. The NHC has not reviewed this, and I haven't discussed this with any of the other commissioners, but I do think it's something in our advisory capacity to you all. The NHC would be interested in reviewing this at our June meeting. Thanks.
Don? You're still muted.
Sorry about that. I support this, and I think that it functions very well. The Nantucket Hotel has a pull-off in front of their hotel, and I work down in this area, and there tends to be a lot of traffic backup from multiple directions. So allowing this for these types of uses is really beneficial. Can I just propose that we have it go to the Historical Commission to take a look at it at their next meeting, and for traffic safety to approve the signage, so it's very clear that no one can be permanently parked there before we see it again.
Okay, thanks, Don. And my comment would be, I'm a little concerned that this is coming to us very much after the fact. And I just would love the planning department and the applicants in these cases who are going to be requesting this type of thing from us to do it way farther in advance than at the tail end of the project would be my only comment. But I do think I'm hearing consensus of the board that we will put it back on the agenda, subject to Don's suggestions of traffic safety and Historic Commission. Does that feel good? And Rita, what's your meeting date? Okay, so they have a meeting June 27th, so we'll agenda this for sometime after that.
Thank you.
Okay. Stephen?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Stephen Welch, Chair of the HDC. We don't recall having seen this. We'd ask that you please include it to us. If we've missed it, shame on us, but we would like to take a look. Thank you.
Okay, so feedback from HCA, HDC, and traffic safety prior to, and we'll let everybody know by email when it's going to be agended to make sure those meetings can happen. So we'll communicate with those groups. Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think I think it's all been said. It's a little too quickly, too much information I don't have yet, so.
Okay.
Let's get it.
All right, there we go.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out that we have been working internally with other departments about improving communications across all projects, not just planning board related. And that's been a relatively new initiative, much more recent than when this project was approved.
Yeah.
But we are working on that.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Leslie. Okay. All right. Nothing else on this item? Okay. Next up is applicant introduction and review of applications for the first half. I'm going to say I'm not going to read them all. Erica, do you want to lead this, or do you want me to read them off, or?
Sure, I'm happy to. Let me
Okay,
just get
thanks.
there real quick.
Yep. So there was a fairly late notification because of an agenda snafu. So we want to make sure that all the applicants who were invited tonight, if you were unable to come tonight, you will have an opportunity next week at our meeting to come and speak about your application. So you will not be left out from that opportunity, and the appointments will be made on the 26th of June.
All right, so
take it away,
I'm
Erica.
gonna read everybody's name, and I apologize if I don't see you in the audience, just yell out. The Agricultural Commission, we have one seat available and one applicant, who is Posey Constable. I'm not sure if she's present or online. I don't see her online. Airport Commission, 2 seats available and 3 applicants, Philip Marks, Andrea Planzer, and Michael Levitt. Right, Michael? Why don't you come up to the mic and just introduce yourself and talk to the board?
And I want to encourage applicants not to do a lot of repeating about stuff that's in their application in writing that we see for weeks ahead, and just give us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what's on the application form. Just a little bit of color on my background. I've had 40+ years in the aviation industry as a service provider, providing flight planning, weather information to airlines, charter operators, the corporate jet community, as well as municipalities, DOTs, DPWs, FBOs. So I'm quite familiar with the business from the vendor side, and have a lot of background and knowledge about what takes place in providing that information. It looks like the current commissioners are well represented by aviation attorneys. You've got some pilots on there, but it seems like one of your constituencies that is not well represented are the private aircraft owners, which generate a huge amount of the airport revenue, and I think is important to the island and the business community to bring them in, and having some representation there is important. I've also run businesses with hundreds of employees, multi-million-dollar P&L responsibility, so I understand businesses and what's necessary to operate within a budget. I believe in a collaborative working arrangement with other people on the commission as well as the community. I've been coming to Nantucket all my life. I've been a full-time resident here for the past 5 years, and I'd like the opportunity to give back to the community. And I think this is one area where my unique background can be beneficial.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much for applying.
Next, we have Board of Health, 1 seat available and 3 applicants, James Cooper, John Katz, and Robert Goldser.
Good evening, I'm Robert Goldser, and thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to try to volunteer to participate and give back. I'm a summer resident of Nantucket since 2003 and a visitor prior to that. I'm a physician and a chief medical officer, and been very active taking care of patients and teaching for 45 years. I recently retired in January, and so now I'm really a summer resident in Nantucket, much more time, and I'm eager to give back and be part of the Board of Health and try to help.
Any questions? Okay. Thanks for applying.
Next, we have the Capital Program Committee, 1 seat available and 0 applicants at this time. However, the incumbent, Peter Kaiser, did apply late, and his name will be in the for consideration in your second round. Cemetery Commission, 2 seats available and 2 applicants, Fran Kartunen and Lee Saperstein, and I think I know Lee's here.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just for the record, I'm Lee Saperstein. And yes, I know there's no opposition to my application for renewal. So Lee, what are you doing here? The answer is really very simple. It's near and dear to the Commission's heart to have Newtown designated officially as a cemetery. We started on this with a meeting with town manager and special town council in 2016. By the way, Madam Chair, thank you for the comment about Ken Beaugrand, because he was very helpful as real estate specialist in this project. Our new real estate specialist says that she's going to be bringing it to the board just as soon as she can get some arrangements with the state. And so I'm standing here, knowing that I probably will be on the commission, begging for this to be given the highest priority, to designate Newtown as a cemetery, so that we may spend some money, DPW money, cemetery commission money, in cleaning it up, particularly the wilderness against Cow Pond. I'm hoping that the police would help us in this, because it's a wilding area, but it is part of the traditional cemetery. But in 1998 was divided off as a separate lot. We'd like to put them all back together again and have them designated. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks for applying for reappointment.
Next is the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. There's one seat available and two applicants, Sarah Boyce and Shelley Lockwood. Sarah, I see, is online, and I don't know if Shelley's here in person. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you all for hearing from me today. I'm Sarah Boyce. I am applying for reappointment for the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. I'm the current vice chair and have served previously as the secretary. I've been a member of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee since inception in 2019. I'm really dedicated to this committee, and I would love to continue to see the work through. I don't want to repeat anything in the application. I think what I want to add is that as an at-large member, I not only can use my scientific background and the basis for my work in research, scientific communication, outreach, and education. I can also, use the other aspects of my life and as a community member. I owned a small business with my husband, and he's part of the working waterfront, and I think that's a really important industry to be represented in this committee. We have a charter fishing business, and he's also a commercial fisherman, so I kind of have the ear to that community as well. I think that since the adoption of the Coastal Resiliency Plan, we have a lot of work to do in terms of implementing a lot of the projects and kind of helping see a lot of them through. And I'd really love the opportunity to continue in that vein. And then I guess the last thing I just want to add is, the ability to use, I think, funding a lot of these projects is kind of the next thing on our horizon. I have a lot of experience with grant writing, and I've, helped review some of the grant applications that we have put together. And I'd love to kind of explore that more as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the committee to do more and kind of move into some new areas as we kind of implement aspects of the CRP. And I would just love the opportunity to see a lot of that through. So thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? Appreciate your application. Thank you.
And there's no Shelley. Okay. Next up is Conservation Commission, 2 seats available and 3 applicants. We have Linda Williams, Ian Golding, and John Schaefer. I know Linda and Ian are both here, and I'm not sure about John. Okay, John's in the back. So all 3 of you. Ladies
Linda?
first.
We are setting a timer for 3 minutes just to keep the ball rolling, just so y'all know.
Very short.
Yep.
Unusually so. Thank you for the opportunity to apply again for the Concom. I have enjoyed my time on the Concom.
Linda, can you lower your mic just a little? There you go.
I know,
Right
I'm
into it.
short.
Yep, thanks.
I've enjoyed my time on the Concom and see the need to continue to find the balance between protection and use and working with the public cooperatively, and that is very essential. As you can see from my extensive town involvement, both elected and appointed, I have committed myself to serving the public for over 40 years. I hate to admit that. And I welcome a chance to continue to do that. I know the island well after 50 years here year-round and 20 before that. Don't add that up. And I know just about every corner of the island at this point. And I thank you for considering to allow me to continue to use my experience and dedication to the community. We have a lot of things going on the Concom. We have the regulation update. We have a couple of other big projects which you're painfully aware of. And I'd like to continue to serve the community. But I've used all my other experience in the Concom from the other boards I've been on. So it's been very interesting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Dawn?
Brooke, yes. There's just one question I wanted to pose to the 2 incumbents. A couple of months ago, the select board requested that all regulatory boards move towards hybrid meetings. And the only board that hasn't been able to move towards that is the Conservation Commission. And I know that there's a lot of concern with maintaining better public access to these meetings. So I'm just wondering if there's any feedback onto why that hasn't been able to happen.
I will defer to the current chairman, which is probably your next speaker. All the other boards that I'm involved with have gone to hybrid. I don't have a problem with going with hybrid. At the time, I think it was a little delayed because one of our primary staff people was living on the Cape. He couldn't find year-round housing. He now is on Nantucket, and he has year-round housing, and he can attend the meetings in person. It's rather difficult to have a hybrid meeting without an actual staff person in the room to sort of monitor the meeting and deal with the people that are still on Zoom. So now that staff person is here, and he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. So I think that was maybe one of the stumbling blocks of having it be a hybrid at the time. But I think we should go to a hybrid meeting because people have complained, particularly when we're discussing regulation changes. And there's a couple of hot button issues on the regulation changes, and people would like to be heard. They'd like to be in the room. They'd like to have more of an easy dialogue, which you can only do on some of these issues in person. So I personally don't have a problem with going to hybrid. I have been in the past sitting in the Kohl's parking lot in New Jersey while my son and my brother cut a swath through Kohl's while I'm on my phone at a Concom meeting. That's happened twice. So it's very encouraging because people can participate that aren't on island, as well as the people that are on island can participate in person. So I think it will serve our purpose to go to hybrid.
Okay, thank you. Great. Ian?
Do you need an assisted listening device? Sorry? Do you need an assisted listening device?
What?
Do you need a Charles has one if you need one.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I have my trumpet here. So, good evening, everyone. Ian Golding, current chair of the Conservation Commission, and I see there's no reason why we shouldn't go to the hybrid model. So, and Linda answered it fairly well. We had a number of consultants who definitely prefer not having to come in from off island, so the hybrid should deal with that. So, stuff that's not on the application. I was a summer brat here growing up. I've been a resident for close to 50 years. And I've been on Concom for 12. When I was first appointed, there were 3 PhDs. I feel that I've learned an awful lot over the last 12 years. And, you know, a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. And both as chair and when I wasn't chair, I've tried to take into account all parties' considerations within the confines of the regulations. And as chair, I've tried to run civil meetings and that everyone is listened to. And Linda alluded to some of the things that we are dealing with, and she's absolutely right. They're sort of hot button issues. And I hope you'll reappoint me because I really care about the island, as we all do in our own ways. So I have no connection to the building industry, and I've been on environmental grant committees now for nearly 20 years, one way and another. So I hope you'll consider me for another 3 years, as I feel I'm taking both the island and the town's interests into account as much as possible going forward. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I'm all good.
Okay, thanks, Ian. John?
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Board Chair. Couple tough facts to follow. I just got the email a couple hours ago, so I don't really have a prepared speech. I've been either a summer resident or permanent resident here since '72. I own a small construction business, so I kind of bring the perspective of that knowledge and experience to the board, hopefully. I'm at the end of kind of a longer career, and I've taken some time to do volunteer activities in my other location, which is in Vermont. I'm on the Building Advisory Committee there. So I'm hoping to be able to give back to somewhere I've been very fortunate to live and work for quite a long time. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for applying, all of you. What's next, Erica?
Next, we have the Contract Review Subcommittee for Human Services. The one seat available and one applicant. It's John Balash, who's the incumbent. I do not see John present or online. Council for Human Services, 3 seats available and 2 applicants. Sue Mittinen and Veronica Bolchik are both the incumbents, and I don't see them either. And again, I do apologize because I sent out the notices late. Council on Aging, 4 seats available and 2 applicants. Linda Williams is one and Lisa Sherburne is the other. And Lisa did email me today. She's not available today or next week, but I told her that was okay and I would just let you know.
Okay, great.
So Linda?
Linda, if you'd like to say anything? Go for it.
It has been a pleasure to serve on the Council on Aging. I've been on for a while now, and Marianne Easley is our fearless leader. She keeps us all together. We've got some real fun stuff coming up here. We've also done a lot of good in the community. We've gotten a couple of grants to retrofit people's bathrooms for safety, ramps, handicap ramps. We have done we had got a transportation grant for people that needed assistance going to their doctor's appointments and whatnot. And we have our senior fair for October, which is the 3rd weekend in October. And we will be on our own again at the high school, and we're putting that together. We have somewhere up to 30 or 40 vendors from all over the island as well as off island for helping the elderly seek whatever they need. It covers almost the full gamut. And then we do flu shots, we do all kinds of stuff. So we're bringing that back after COVID. So we have a lot of great stuff going on. I'd like to continue to work with the ladies that are on it and the gentleman that's on it. And we have a very dedicated group of, almost all of us are seniors. There's a couple under 60, but the rest of us are over 60. So we have a personal stake in what we do. But it's a good group to be with, and we try to do as much as we can to improve the lives of those who need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least is Cultural Council. We have 2 seats available and 1 applicant, who is Tony Wagner. Not seeing Tony. I did want to note one thing. I spoke with Chantal, the Culture and Tourism Director, last week about the Cultural Council, and Emma Young, whose term doesn't expire by our records until 2026, is actually resigning to end her 6-year term at the end of the month. Because the Massachusetts Cultural Council only allows somebody to serve 6 consecutive years. Previously, we thought that it was going to be 2 terms, and if you had a partial term, that didn't really count. But that has since been clarified that it is 6 consecutive years. So on round 2, I'll be re-advertising that extra seat.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks for that clarification.
And that's it.
Is there anything else from the board on this? I just wanted to make a comment, and just a general comment. I would encourage applicants, we have a question on the form that asks whether you have attended or watched meetings. And I'm finding a lot of applicants have said that they do not or have not watched meetings of the board or committee that they're applying for. And while I appreciate community interest, I think knowing exactly what the work of the board is, by attending or watching on YouTube those meetings is critical for me, certainly in my mind, when I consider an application, and also so you're not gobsmacked and realize that Board of Health isn't just about health, it's about septic variances and a lot of pretty routine stuff, right, Malcolm, that folks might not realize are part of the tasks of the board or commission. So I encourage applicants to take the time and check that box on their applications.
I agree with you. I think it's important. I mean, our board is, it is health, but we spend a lot of time doing things that aren't so fun, like septic systems, variances, numbers of windows in a room, summer camp regulations. It's really exciting sometimes.
So anyway, just it's a general comment. The Board of Health was one that struck out at me. So anyway, Thanks to everyone for applying, and keep your eye out for round 2 because there are additional positions open. And sometimes it helps to start on a committee that doesn't meet as often or has less work or less obligation to get a sense of how board and committee process works in the town. And prior service, I think, supports an application for some of these bigger, more, I would say, competitive positions as well, in my mind. So, okay. Moving on, town manager's report.
Thank you. As the board knows, back in April, we started a monthly program of departmental reports, and we're making our way through each department under town administration. And that was a result of a request from the board to replace the quarterly budget reports with a more departmentally focused operational and project review by department. So today, we have Culture and Tourism Director Chantal Blois Murphy. She's going to undertake the Culture and Tourism Department report, and take it away, Chantal.
Thank you. Again, my name is Chantal Blois Murphy, Director of Culture and Tourism, here with our department update. Pardon me, my allergies are killing me, so I'm going to keep clearing my throat. We can go to the next slide, please. So really quickly, just a little bit about the Culture and Tourism Department. Our mission is to support the continued development of Nantucket as a healthy community in which tourism is a significant contributor to residents' economic stability and security, and Nantucket's natural, cultural, and historic resources and quality of life are enjoyed by tourists and residents while being protected for future generations. So that was a mouthful, and we do a mouthful over there. So our goals for FY 24 to 25 is to continue to support underfunded cultural organizations and programs to attract diverse audiences, to create a robust series of off-season activities within the Nantucket Cultural District, such as ACT Local Fest, which we'll get into later on in the presentation, and to bring back Chowder Fest. I am determined. And then to support the cultural partners within the district and to support the town's sustainability initiative by leveraging the importance of tourism stakeholders' involvement in promoting and participating in sustainable business practices. Next slide, please. So the organizational chart is there. It's very simple, so I won't even go over that. We can skip on to the next one. So really quickly about how our department is structured. We have 2 year-round staff members. That includes myself and our visitor services coordinator, David Sharp, who's been with the town for 25 years, so I'm very grateful for him. We also have a seasonal children's beach coordinator, and then we have about 10 to 12 seasonal information aides that run our 3 sites from April 1st to December 31st. And that's really 10 to 12 in a really, really good year. We typically average about 8 seasonal information aides. So the Visitor Services Office at 25 Federal Street, you can go to the next slide, thank you. At 25 Federal Street is open year-round, 7 days a week from 9 to 5, and that's from Daffodil Festival to Indigenous Peoples Weekend. And then, of course, after that, we're Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, of course, discounting Stroll Weekend when we go back to our summer hours. We also have our Straight Wharf kiosk that's right across the street from, or right across the dock from the High Line. And then we can be found in the airport main terminal right alongside the car rentals. And of course, when flights arrive, we have someone that is stationed down at the arrival section to help people really find Ubers and ride shares and their bags. So we have a lot of great staff at Culture and Tourism. So we can move to the next slide. I'll go over some visitor statistics, and these numbers will probably scare you just a little bit, and I'll explain why those numbers are so large. So in 2021, we had 4.5 million visits to the island. In 2022, we had 3.85 million. In 2023, we had 3.25. And then so far, so I pulled this report on May 20th of this year, we've had 327,000 visits. So there's a difference between visits and visitors. Our visitors are coming to the island on average 7.85 times per year. So what we look at is essentially anyone that's coming to the island for less than 30 days. So as we know, our seasonal residents might be traveling to the island for a week and then they leave and then they come back again, 2 weeks later, and then they leave again. So they count into the overall visits to the island. So as far as unique visitors to the island, in 2021, we had 528,000 visitors. 2022, we had 513,000. 2023, we had 498,000 visitors to the island. And so far in 2024, we've had 72,000 visitors. The most drastic increase that we've seen over the last few years was in 2021, but we've seen a steady decline of visitors to the island by about 3% each year. And since the start of this calendar year, we've actually seen more visitors in the off season, so the start of the year this year, than we have in previous years. So it should be interesting to see what those statistics look like at the end of the year once I pull that. Visitor services sites typically, on average, assist about 6 to 10% of the annual visitors to the island at our 3 sites, and those numbers don't include the host of phone calls that we get from people as they're planning their trips to the island, or the emails, requests for mailers, and things like that. We can actually go ahead and skip to the next slide. And our budget is pretty straightforward. We don't ask for anything extra. Do a lot of grant writing to get projects done, so that I don't have to come back to you all or go to the taxpayers for additional funding. So we had no expense increase requests in 24 or 25, and our payroll expenses are forecasted at $326,656,000. $656, sorry, don't be scared by that number that I said wrong. And that's allocated between our year-round and seasonal employees. And then for our operating expenses, it's forecasted at $166,634.47. And that includes $77,500 that goes towards our 4th of July celebrations. A lot of that is the fireworks show that we all get to enjoy, and all of the activities that happen throughout that day. $7,000 goes towards our Sunday night concerts on the bandstand down at Children's Beach, $9,400 to other seasonal activities such as the puppet show for kids, Magic Mark in the park, hopefully capoeira once we get that schedule sorted out down there, and then, the kids' tie-dyes and crafts and such that happen down at Children's Beach that we're hoping to ramp up quite a bit this year. And the rest of our operating budget goes towards, the usual things like production of the travel and lodging brochure, printing maps and other pamphlets and flyers that our staff share with visitors, as well as, internet, electricity, that sort of thing. So, and we can go ahead and skip to the next slide. Thank you. So some key projects that we've been working on. As we know, we have not been able to get passports on the island for a number of years now. Part of that had to do with COVID. And then, of course, with staffing issues, we did have the person that was certified by the State Department to do that. She did retire. So that created a little bit of a gap where if you're a parent like myself, you had to travel off the island to do passport renewals. So I took it upon myself in November of last year to try to figure out how to get the Visitor Services and Information Bureau certified by the State Department as a passport acceptance site. We were fortunate to be certified by December, so I moved really quickly on that. And I went through the training to become a State Department agent, which is really exciting. I hope I get a badge someday. And now I'm the person that is certified to accept passports on the island. And the goal is by the end of the summer to get one more person in our office certified, because I do recognize that Mondays and Wednesdays from 8 to 12 is a little hard, especially if you have kids or you're working or you're a teacher, especially it's hard to pull out of work or school to get down there. So my hope is that we can offer some afternoon hours as well to help alleviate some of that burden. The next is, like I mentioned, Act Local earlier in my intro. Our goal, so we've partnered with the Health and Human Services Office as well as our comms office to execute a series of local-centric, is what I'm calling them, events that serve to bring the community together in safe, family-friendly environments to promote the cultural diversity of the island. So I grew up on the island. I think many of us who grew up here remember all those great festivals and programs that would happen in the off-season that really made you feel like you are among your neighbors and your communities. And we're working really hard to just revamp, pull some of those older or programs, bring them back, and find a way to tie in many of the services that we have available on the island and present them to folks in a more exciting way. It's really hard to say that we have We have services on the island that can assist with rental assistance even. How do you reach those people? Well, we plan these great events and have them come find us, and have representatives from various nonprofits there to help offer that information. So stay tuned for a schedule on that. We're working really hard on some great logo and marketing for those events that will kick off in October of this year. Next, working to improve the event and film permitting process. And part of that is the new Cultural Affairs and Special Events Coordinator role that was presented. So we have our Children's Beach Coordinator position that is a seasonal position. We have had a really hard time hiring for that. It is a part-time seasonal position, but it was funded many moons ago. And we've been successful in hiring twice since it was funded, and it's just kind of been sitting there. So what we're doing is lumping that into this and working with the police department to bring over the special events coordinator role back over to culture and tourism. And I say back over because 2 directors ago, it was under culture and tourism. And we're working on kind of cleaning up the application process a little bit, finding more technology that makes it easier for folks applying for permits, working with other towns, working with film production companies on what the barriers are for filming on the island, and making sure that they understand that we are an island, we are unique, we have certain rules that we expect them to follow. So presenting them with that information prior to them even thinking of applying on the island. So more to come on that as we continue to develop that. And then, of course, a public arts policy. And I'm sure many of you miss the sculpture that's usually in the small rotary. That is not there because we have been working on our public art policy. As we know, many towns have been dealing with this, with issues of people just putting things on public property because they don't have a proper policy in place. We did have one that we're working really hard on, just making a little bit clearer and putting a little bit more teeth behind it. We've been reviewing the public arts policy for 5 different towns and their application process. So Libby, that will be on your desk in the morning, by the way. I was working on it earlier, and you know I'm a perfectionist, so I don't send you anything until I know it's just right. And then, of course, our management of the Nantucket Cultural District is another major project that we've been working on. So the Cultural District is kind of a baby of mine. I joined the Cultural District redesignation team prior to my role at Culture and Tourism. We were redesignated during COVID, so that made it a little bit interesting. For many towns, their cultural district is either their small historic district or their downtown business district, where many of their venues or cultural heritage sites are. Our cultural district, when we redesignated, we recognized that we were missing a lot of our key partners, cultural partners. That included sites out in Sconset, included the Linda Loring Nature Foundation, the African Meeting House, it included Egan Maritime. We wanted to make sure that we were representing all of those organizations so that the funding that we get from Massachusetts Cultural Council and all of that grant writing that I mentioned earlier, that it was trickling down to them as well. And not being a part of the cultural district meant that we were excluding those organizations that do so much for this island. So that was a big project. We were able to execute that redesignation. And just to go over our cultural district really quickly, what we do is we focus on helping local arts, humanities, and science organizations improve the quality and range of their public programs so that more local families can benefit from them. And this enhances the experience for visitors and attracts tourists, which then brings in more tax revenue to our island. Our mission is to enhance the arts and culture of our diverse community and promote their importance for our health and happiness while encouraging their enjoyment by visitors and residents in collaboration with the local businesses. And I'm excited to say that today we represent over 230 organizations, venues, and cultural sites. And those include our trails as well. This year, we were able to award $35,000 in grant funding to 11 organizations for programs ranging from sea shanty concerts to artists in residency programs, so wildflower, botanical, watercolor workshops. In addition, we act as a free marketing platform for organizations planning programs, and we're really excited to continue to keep that free, and that is in part from funding from Remain, who's a huge contributor to the Nantucket Cultural District. Cultural organizations planning events are invited to list on our website. Anything listed on our website can then be found at our 2 interactive events calendars that are in the Visitor Services office and also over at Greenhound. So if you're walking around town, I encourage you to please pop into either one of those sites and go find out what's happening on the island. You can click a link, it takes you directly to that organization's website, and then you can purchase tickets right there as well. So we're not dealing with any money from these organizations, we're just directing you to the spaces. We also promote their events on our social media. In addition to our partnership with Daybreak, we have a banner with a link to our website at the bottom of each of their newsletters, so that we're giving people additional exposure. And we can skip to the next slide. Thank you. So we've had a lot of great achievements. It was really hard to decide what to put on this slide. So I'll just brag about our grant writing abilities over at Culture and Tourism. So the department received a $35,000 Destination Development Capital Grant from the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, and that's to assist with the reshingling or replacing the windows at Visitor Services. Unfortunately, our building missed the opportunity to be included in that campus-wide renovation. So we were lucky to receive this grant to help us out a little bit. And then the department also received almost $200,000 in grant funding from Remain, Community Foundation's Nantucket Offshore Wind Community Fund, Massachusetts, and the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, can't forget them, to support the Nantucket Cultural District. We can skip to the next one. And just to summarize, the culture and tourism is often visitors' first contact with the town of Nantucket as an administration. Upon arriving on the island, we strive to offer relevant, up-to-date information and quality service. We're excited that by the end of the year, we'll be able to offer 2 new services at Culture and Tourism, and we look forward to more opportunities to not just serve our visitors, but also our year-round residents. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah. First, I'm very impressive. That was very good.
Thank you.
I have, my passport is expired, so I'll be coming to see you.
Come on over.
I saw it online somewhere a month or so ago and waited. How do you differentiate between commuters and visitors in those numbers?
So those numbers are strictly visitors. We can see commuter numbers because those people typically travel on certain times of the day. So it's really easy to pull those folks out. We work with a company called Placer AI on the data. So they can tell us residents, commuters, and true visitors to the island.
Right. So it's AI, are they pulling it from?
It's AI, yeah.
Yeah, from phone
Oh,
info
yeah.
or something, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's, I don't want to say it because my family is very religious, but I feel, as I'm looking at the data, I'm always like, oh my gosh, this must be what God feels like looking at all of us down here. My mind is always blown. But yeah, it's pretty much cell phone data that they pull it from. So it's really simple. If you have your favorite gaming app on your phone, there's a little thing that you check off that you don't even notice that gives them access to just super basic information. I can't look at the data and ever tell that it's you, Matt Fee. I don't get that kind of information. It's all anonymous.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It's amazing what we have at our
Location
fingertips.
services.
Yeah,
And
location services.
they know, they can tell me, I haven't done this, but my other Something Natural did this, they know where their customers have come from. You know, what towns, what cities they're from, and they're visiting there, and it's kind of scary. You've got a little transmitter in your pocket at all times.
It works great for marketing, and I've been telling all of our nonprofit organizations on the island that if you're working on a marketing plan or you're working on any grant writing and you need access to this information, I'm happy to share it with you.
Thank you, that's great information. Anybody else?
No, sure. Chantal, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much for coming and doing this summary for us. I understand that you volunteered to be the passport agent for the town, which is fantastic.
Glutton for punishment.
So thank you for doing that on behalf of all residents. That's a huge, so folks don't have to go off island. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chantal.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next, Libby?
Okay, next up, review of solid waste facility operations request for proposals and waste services agreement. So just a little bit of background before I turn things over to George Aronson, our solid waste consultant. As the board knows, our current waste services agreement with our current landfill or solid waste facility operator expires at the end of 2025. Preparations for that expiration and potential transition have been underway for several years. Most recently, you will recall, in January of 2024, we gave the board a comprehensive overview of long-term solid waste planning, including plans to issue a request for proposals, an RFP, this spring. The RFP includes a rewritten waste services agreement, and we are pretty much ready to launch this. We wanted to review it with you all first. The documents have been prepared, reviewed, and discussed with the Administrative Long-Term Solid Waste Work Group, which contains town council, our solid waste consultant, and a number of staff people, a capital program committee member, FinCom member, select board member, and there's probably more, our solid waste manager who's here right now, Chris Lowe. And we also had engaged, as you will probably recall, special counsel to review all of this because it's quite complex. So like I said, we're ready to issue it pending a final review with you all. So I would turn it over to George. There's a presentation in your packet that George is going to take us through. And we're available to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Libby. George Aronson, consultant. And so I'll try to be brief and then and focus on questions. But yeah, let's go to the next page. Just a quick overview of the landfill. And again, there's a lot of information on this. I'm not going to go through it all. Landfill takes up a lot of the space of the property at 1888 Nantucket Road, but you also see on the right the facilities, including the, that's the left. The right includes the drop-off center and recycling facility. Below it, the composter, and to the bottom right, the transfer station. There are also areas outside where various hard to manage wastes are handled, including mattresses, screens, tires, that sort of thing. And then there's space that is used for composting and for processing organic materials, including yard waste and wood separately. Again, we are looking at a 10-year contract for the next contract operator with options to renew for 3 additional 5-year terms. So that's the quick snapshot of the site and the facilities that would be operated by the contract operator. Next slide, please. Again, on January 11th, we presented 4 key town initiatives as part of that proposal for the town to own and control all the facilities at the site, replace the web service agreement. We're looking at separate collection of organics and Nernix townwide. I guess the key point here is that solid waste management needs keep changing. We have to have a document and an approach that is flexible enough to be prepared for changes and yet have a baseline defined so that we know what those changes are and we can have costs match services being provided as there are changes from the baseline. And that's kind of the approach we've taken. We know what we're asking for to do today. We have to have a baseline because what will happen tomorrow will be different. And we know that we can't expect to be too rigid in what we're asking for, anticipating that changes, but we need a structure that can accommodate those changes and make sure that services and costs are in tune with each other, which has been a problem for the last 25 years, very frankly. Some milestones, the board has seen the executed memorandum of understanding, so the town now has a written MOU to buy the composter and the transfer station. There will be a purchase and sale agreement. That's going to come, and you'll see that in a minute, after we've been through the RFP process. And because, in fact, if Waste Options win it, it might be a little bit different in terms of transition requirements than if another party wins. And we want to make sure that we're not doubling back on negotiation time and accounting for the actual process going forward. Town meeting approved the warrant article, appropriate funds for the purchase, and the draft RFP is now prepared and ready for release, subject to tonight and whatever changes might be required. Next slide, please. Key features, we're doing a Chapter 30B approach, which means that the proposals will submit a technical proposal. A full technical evaluation will be conducted in accordance with the criteria of minimum requirements and comparative requirements that are set forth in the RFP. And once those proposals are evaluated and ranked, then the price proposals will be opened. The idea is to look at technical requirements first so that a low bidder who's providing an inferior proposal isn't automatically selected. Again, we're looking at a most advantageous proposal rather than lowest cost. It also gives some ability within the bounds of what's in the RFP and what the proposer has suggested to negotiate waste services agreement terms. Again, as was mentioned, there's a new revised template waste services agreement prepared by town council and discussed by the group at some length. And that will go out with the RFP, and the proposals will mark that up, redline it, and we'll see what they agree to and what they want to negotiate. We've gone to great lengths to define a set of services and to request pricing for each service. This is new compared to the last agreement where there was one set of prices, not clear definition of what constituted the services, and every time something changed, the town was not in the best position to negotiate pricing to match the service since the baseline was not defined. We've learned we can do better, and we believe this RFP addresses that issue as best as it can be addressed, given how much change there will be. And finally, when the town buys the composter and the transfer station, it will own all the facilities as the site. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but it means the town's going to take on some responsibilities as owner that have been delegated to the operator for the last 25 years. Next slide, please. I think I talked about a new service directive. What exactly is the contract operator expected to do at a high level? Receive solid waste, make sure it goes where it needs to go, operate, maintain the facilities when it gets there, mark the products, manage the residuals, and perform or be subject to listed liquidated damages. It's a high level of principles, and hopefully they're clearing up, and there's a lot of detail underneath each of those directives, but setting some standards and directives at the top and then following them down to detail hopefully provides a structure where we can request the services and evaluate what we're receiving within a fairly defined framework. Again, we're requiring performance and payment bonds for financial assurance. This is a new requirement, and we're going to hold the contractor responsible for prevailing wage compliance as well. Next slide, please. Again, some detail. I'm not going to go through it. We've defined 8 service areas on the left. For each, there are performance objectives, and there's a checklist of tasks that's going out. We'll see what comes back. Similarly, for pricing, each service has a fixed price, has a per unit price. There are baseline items that we know are going to end up being passed through costs, so we're defining those up front, such as off-island costs that are outside the control of the contract operator. And then since we know that there are going to be items that different proposers may wish to see as pass-through costs, they have that option in the bid, which they're going to do anyway, so we might as well define it and structure it and see what it is. We're also asking for revenue sharing and defined options and areas for exceptions in a fairly structured process. So the idea is to know and be able to evaluate what is proposed. Next slide, please. Again, the town is stepping up to some new responsibilities. A lot of the engineering review, we're going to have a town engineer rather than the contract operator have its engineer. That gives the town control over changes in facility equipment. Town can do procurement. The town will have we're looking for the town to have a landfill engineer do its own permitting, procurement, and oversight of construction going forward. Site planning, we have not yet been able to produce an overall plan for the site. We're looking to do that as part of the process going forward. That's one of the things that having the town control of engineering that will enable the town to do. Third-party inspections, right now, the contract operator inspects itself. Inspector ought to answer to the town as owner, and this will take care of that going forward. Off-take arrangements, when, for example, C&D waste goes to the mainland, and there's a tip fee that's a pass-through cost to the town. If the town's being passed through the town, the town ought to manage the arrangement for which the costs are being passed through to it, and we have roll that into the arrangements as well. And finally, the last contract didn't provide a lot of enforcement ability for a number of areas where we actually have listed performance requirements and listed liquidated damages that provides the town with the ability to actually offset payments with penalties in the event of certain identified performance shortfalls without taking it up to a default level. And so that gives the town more control to manage performance and hold the contractor responsible in a way that the current contract does not allow. And finally, there's some, I'll call them throw-ins. We're seeking information on alternative technologies and on transportation for town consideration. Town doesn't have to accept these proposals, but if somebody's got an idea out there that makes it look good, we know change is coming. Let's look at the change now and consider that as part of the overall evaluation. And finally, next slide. This is a brief schedule. Issue RFP. If we go out in June, we'll have a mandatory site tour and pre-proposal conference in July. We don't want anybody proposing unless somebody on the team has been and looked at the site. There will always be questions and responses. The town may have to issue addenda to correct things in the RFP going forward based on some of the questions or to clarify once we learn what bidders' concerns are. We'll close that period in August. We're looking at a September deadline for the responses. The idea is a 90-day period to respond on something this complicated. So if we go out June 12th, we get proposals back September 12th. We're leaving approximately a month for a decision award. Of course, again, the town can change these deadlines. This is what we're hoping to do. That gives us fall, winter 2024 to negotiate agreements, as well as to close on the waste options purchase and sale agreement and a transition agreement regarding what they would leave behind if there's someone else to come forward. Spring 2025 is town meeting to authorize appropriate funds for town supporting resources. Start that transition in the summer and fall and be ready for a seamless transition to the new operator or the new arrangement December 1st, 2025. I know that's a lot of information in a short time, so but that's the overview of what the RFP is, how we're planning to implement it, and happy to take questions.
Any questions from the board? You look like you were leading in.
Pretty complete.
Dawn?
I don't have any actual questions. I'm just really thankful for all the work that everyone's put in on this and that we're proceeding forward in a very thoughtful, well laid out manner.
Thank you. It's been a real team effort across the town and from a lot of departments and a lot of input. And here we go.
Okay, so what is the action needed from the board tonight?
This was just an update, right, George? We don't need a board vote on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the important is to signal to the board that as right now our intention is to we left a week for whatever cleanup or response might be needed, and it does take a little bit of time to post things on open.gov, but we're looking to issue June 12th.
I guess I do have a question. So we're doing 30B. So we're going to look at technically which is the best proposal, and we'll rank the proposals. So you'll have, say, five people, and you rank them 1 to 5, and you open them up, and then you look at the various prices in all those different categories. How do you, at that point, how do you do it? Like how do you pick? You see what I'm saying? Like you've got 5 people with 10 categories with, that's what, 50, how many different prices? How do you do that at that point in this process?
Okay, so presumably as part of the technical proposal, and we'll actually put out a little evaluation manual so that each of the evaluators will evaluate, and then we'll get together as a group and come up with a consensus evaluation and rate the proposals. At that point, we'll know what the technical advantages and disadvantages are of each looking at them side by side. Now we're going to open the price proposals and do the same thing, which is have our side-by-side matrix, discuss among ourselves, and come to a consensus on for each proposal side by side. And again, we're going to be doing it's a 10-year where we're looking at side-by-side economics to the extent there's per unit pricing. We know what the units have been in the last year or the last few years, so we can actually turn that into dollars and get a sense of the real cost trade-offs between the proposals. And now at some point, you're into a judgment trade-off between here's our preferences technically, here's where the cost rates, and we're going to be looking at trade-offs between cost and proposals. It sounds actually a lot more complicated than in my experience it ends up being, because it turns out there are a handful of factors that stand out, and you bring people in, you interview, and you bear down, and then you make a decision, which, by the way, as part of the 30B process, is something that you need to document in writing. Because if you're going to make a decision that, yeah, we prefer this technical proposal over this lowest cost proposal because we didn't believe these pricing was credible, or that the scope could be performed for the price or whatever, or they took exceptions to the things that we actually think by the time they're done will actually cost more, and we're more comfortable with this more comprehensive approach. Those are the types of trade-offs we're looking at. I think the minimum requirements in terms of the level of technical proposal needed to be presented to be deemed complete are going to be a real hurdle. I think there are a lot of, I don't expect a lot of proposals. In fact, our concerns have been in the other direction. We know Waste Options has said multiple times they're bid. Little concerned about how many other proposals we'll get. I know we've been in contact with multiple vendors who have expressed strong interest. And our hope is if we end up with 3 or 4 proposals, then the evaluation is actually quite manageable. I did one recently where I got 11 proposals, and that took some time, but we got through it and we picked a good contractor. So I don't know what else to say beside that, other than with a systematic approach, doing the technical first, you've got matrices where side by side, you know what the differences are, you concentrate on the differences that are most important, and then you're trading off costs and technical advantages, disadvantages where they appear. If you do it step by step, it can be quite a manageable process. And so let's see what we get. That's, in my experience has been, you can usually get there.
Yeah, now I'm glad that you are involved and have done it. My only experience with a similar was with Ticcoma Green. And I felt at the end that, there was a couple others that we liked more, but this one was cheaper. And I felt like I didn't understand it, or, myself. And I'm glad that we have the expertise that we have for this.
Yeah, we have some amazing expertise.
I know that.
On this group, so.
And we are very fortunate to have that, because that's what you need. It's very difficult to, if you're not doing this every day or haven't done this in other situations, you can have all the spreadsheets and all the numbers, but you need to, there's a skill to this, I think, and I'm glad they're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And more often than not, you come down to a short list of concerns or things and you can bring somebody into an interview and get answers, or at least, I've been through this a number of times, and it's all surprising how often there's consensus on the choice. Not always, but surprising how often.
Okay, thanks, George, very much for all the work, and thanks to everybody in the group. It's been a lot of work, and it's been really interesting. Trash talk. Okay, next up, overview of site planning for 246 Fairgrounds Road.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the group as well. We have been meeting quite regularly, and they're not short meetings. So the site planning for 246 Fairgrounds, and there are also included in this site overview is town-owned lots on Waitt Drive in Ticcoma. The overview was requested some time ago. I think, Matt, you were the one who had asked for this, and we realized we wanted to give a very comprehensive overview, and it took a lot longer than we thought. A lot has changed since the town purchased the 2 Fairgrounds Road property
from the electric company in 2004. And we're going to go through some of that as we take you through the presentation that's coming up. I'm going to do a little bit of it. The planning director is going to do a little bit, the housing director, and the assistant town manager, Rick Sears. So I'm going to start it. Thank you, Erica. So this is just an overview of the site, the original 2 Fairgrounds site that it's a 20-acre site, and it now encompasses 246. 2 has been divided into 246. And then we also have those town-owned lots. There's some on Waitt Drive, some on Ticcoma. The property acquisition was secured with an appropriation from the 2024 annual town meeting of $15.5 million. After the acquisition, we established a 2FG reuse work group, and there were some former board members on that, and that group undertook a planning exercise. And some of the recommendations included that the 2 Fairgrounds building, which the electric company had occupied, be replaced and the site used for other municipal functions and housing. And there are some links if people are interested in going back and looking at those documents. The development of the campus overall, as it's been happening and is hopefully going to happen, supports all 5 select board strategic plan focus areas. You can go to the next slide. It's a total area of just almost 20 acres. It includes the 4 parcels that I mentioned. 2 Fairgrounds we call the municipal lot, that has the building on it and the parking lot. 4 Fairgrounds has the public safety facility, which we are in right now on it. 6 is sort of the Ticcoma Green site, and the remaining lots are listed there. Again, Waitt Drive and Ticcoma. And it's bounded by Fairgrounds, Old South, Waitt, and Ticcoma. This is just a aerial map of the site. I think you're all fairly familiar with it, but it helps to look at a map sometimes. And this is the what's it called? The GIS map. And I think Leslie, you're going to do 2 Fairgrounds.
All right, so 2 Fairgrounds next door. I think everyone's familiar with it, commonly known as the Plus Building. It was built in 1969 for the Nantucket Electric Company. If you go over there, you'll see it's largely unchanged, both inside and out from that time period. It's a 1-story metal building. The planning department moved there in 2005. We were a much smaller group then. There were about 8 people. Prior to that, we were located at 1 East Chestnut Street and 3 North Water, so it made sense to consolidate operations at the 2 Fairgrounds facility, which was just recently acquired by the town. Right now, there are some issues with the building, the warehouse, which is where all of the files are located for the HDC, for planning, for building, health files. Some old ones are still there. It's not climate controlled. The roof is somewhat questionable. It's in poor condition. And as already noted, there was a reuse plan that was done back in 2004. Plus staff, which was building, health. They were formerly at the 37 Washington Street building where finance is now. They relocated to 2 Fairgrounds in 2012. We became the Plus department then. We're the primary occupant. The building has our office areas. We also house 2 IT staff people and the DPW sign employee. We have our workspaces. There's a public area for people to review files. There's a conference room, a break room, kitchen area, and then again, our file storage is all in the garage. Marine and IT and DPW use portions of the building for storage as well. And we have parking, which we'll talk about in a later slide. If you want to go, okay, there's the building. Since 2004, when it was acquired, as I think I said, there have been very few improvements. I don't think really any to the exterior of the structure. Interior improvements have been limited to carpet, painting, the HVAC system is currently being replaced, but that's about it. There's some more pictures of the building. You'll see there's a fire trailer stored in the garage next to our files. There's office product storage. There's a mezzanine area that has a lot of miscellaneous stuff up there. And the last slide to the right is the interior of the sign office, where the vinyl signs are made. That's a DPW function. The municipal parking lot. The slide on the left shows the building at the top. You'll see there's a cul-de-sac type area in front of the building. That's where the public parks who are coming to the Plus building during the daytime to do their business. Along the side of the building, there are quite a few garage bays. That's where the Plus staff generally parks. There's an area to the rear of the building that's used by Marine. They have boats there sometimes and other equipment. And then the back of the parking lot, which you'll see over on the right-hand slide, is used by the public. The parking lot is currently being reviewed for operational improvements, for functional improvements. That's underway. Right now, it's not really managed. It's just an area to, as you may recall, quite some time ago, there was an initiative to get commercial vehicles out of the downtown so that that area could be available for patrons of the businesses, for resident parking. So this is largely commercial vehicle parking. There's a NERDA stop back there for NERDA shuttle service into town. In the evening hours, the front parking area is used by local surrounding businesses. So we do have staggered hours that help with lots of, parking issues in the area. I'll point out that the two Fairgrounds parking lot and building are centrally located in the middle of this site. You can get from the parking lot out to Old South Road. You can go around and you can go out to Fairgrounds Road. You can go through the back of the parking lot out to Waitt Drive. There's a connection now out to Amelia, and you can go down to Amelia out to Ticcoma. So there's a lot of connectivity, and that does need some improvement, which I think Rick or Libby is going to talk about later.
This was me, right? Yeah, sorry. We did actually coordinate this. So the public safety facility building, which we're in right now, was constructed in 2011, and it comprises the square footage shown there. It's currently occupied by the police department, the IT department, and the fire department, all as listed in those dates. The police department has 60 to 100 staff people, 41 sworn officers, most of which are, their workplace is here. The rest of that is other admin staff and also the summer staff, which does train here and come here, but they're not here all the time. Fire has 38 staff, sleeps 14, and they have vehicle and equipment storage, both indoor and outdoor. Very much of it is outdoor. And the IT staff is just about 9, and they're in a pretty small area for 9 people. We were going to potentially talk about the public safety auxiliary building, but now we're not because it didn't pass at the election. And I think we're probably perhaps going to shelve that for a little while, even though it's a pretty important project if we want our public safety equipment to last longer and be undercover. So that's unfortunate, but we'll have to talk about it later as to how we want to proceed with it.
Libby, is
Yes.
that why there's a truck in the records room at 2FG?
Yes. We're trying to put some of the equipment anywhere where we can get it undercover, especially if it really needs to be undercover. And sometimes that's not in good space that's actually built for that purpose.
The night that we talked about this, when I just was Googled online and found, I know it was Sandwich, somewhere on the Cape, and they had quantified how much they were saving by building a building at the time. And I want to say it was $500,000, $1 million a year in something like along those lines of wear and tear on their equipment. And so, I look at that 5 million and I look at us spending 2.6 on a shed that's not finished. And I think 5 million is a good deal, compared to what we've paid for, the property at the building out at Delta. So I can't believe that we didn't pass it. I wish I had spoken to it, but I didn't, so.
That's a good point, Matt. We've actually talked about how to calculate that wear and tear number.
Well, it was somewhere on the Cape had done
Okay.
it, and they had done a study on it, so. And I brought it up, I think, that night, too. But it was substantial. It was real money. It wasn't.
Yeah, it definitely adds up quickly. Next slide. And this is just, again, an aerial of the Ford Fairgrounds site. And you can see a lot of the equipment parked behind the fire area is not undercover because it can't fit anywhere. Okay, Christie's going to take 6 Fairgrounds.
So as was mentioned earlier by Libby, in the 2004 site planning exercise, there was interest in developing housing for the community as part of this lot. In 2017, the town issued an RFP to develop 6 fairgrounds and awarded this project to Halkeen. Their bid was to create 64 units of rental housing, serving a variety of income levels from 30% to 120% of area and median income. And they also included 6 market rate units because the select board wanted to make sure that no community member would be excluded from being housed in this project. The development was scheduled to be completed in 2019 after that award, but unfortunately was held up in litigation when neighbors appealed the planning board permit. The appeal lasted several years, and then the global pandemic and rising construction costs have not only delayed the project, but caused significant price increases. The project has more than doubled in price, and Halkeen has been working diligently over the past 2 years to secure additional funding from the state, which just added more time to the project. We've been coming to the select board with updates from Halkeen regularly, and they're hopeful that we're past a lot of these hurdles and they'll be pulling the building permits by the fall, with construction to begin in early 2025. Next slide, please. This is just showing the site plan of the parcels for 6 fairgrounds where the development would go. Next slide. And this is just the site plan of the 4 buildings that would contain the 64 units and the parking associated with the project. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick now.
Okay, so I've got the last part here, which is the A&R lots and the roadways. And I've started out with a slide because there's going to be a lot of information on the next page. So just so you get a visual of what we're talking about, everything inside the red lines. So that's Ticcoma from left to right. That's Waitt from the bottom to the top. And then that little thing that goes off to the right there is I'm going to call that the Waitt Drive connector for the purposes of tonight's discussions. So if you could go to the next slide, thank you. So just where we are. So Waitt Drive was.
Can you come a little
Waitt
closer?
Drive was
Rick? Thank you.
constructed in 21 and 22. And on the south side of Waitt Drive, which is the part that backs up to Amelia, I'm just going to take you through, starting at the parking lot and working towards Ticcoma Way. The first lot is a 10,000 square foot lot where we intend to build the dormitory. We're well into the design phase of the dormitory. We've taken it to HDC. We've gotten a lot of comments back. We're planning to go back to HDC within a couple of weeks. We should be able to house as many as 50 seasonal staff, and there's 2 apartments there, a 2-bedroom on the first floor and a 1-bedroom on the second floor. Moving from the parking lot end back towards Ticcoma, we have several lots. They're about 7,500 feet each. They're developable. We need a plan. Then there's 3 habitat lots that are under construction, 6 residences. And then all the way at the Ticcoma end, there's 2 privately owned lots which were developed by Habitat. They're single-family homes, 2-bedroom single-family homes. On the other side of Waitt Drive, so the north side, the side closer to the fire station, We have one town-owned lot at 8 Waitt Drive, and we have 48 perpendicular parking spaces. Ticcoma, there's actually 9 lots between Ticcoma, on Ticcoma between Fairgrounds and Waitt Drive. 8 of them are town-owned and developable. They're 5,100 square foot lots, and we have a preliminary schematic plan for town employee housing. They're both single-family and duplex. And then there's one lot that has two dwelling units on it that were developed by Housing Nantucket, and that's at the corner of Ticcoma and Waitt. So a little more detail on Waitt Drive. If you could advance the slide, please. So really high level. If you think of the parking lot at 2 Fairgrounds at the top right-hand corner, just below that where it says Town of Nantucket Seasonal, that's where the dorm goes. Then to the left of that is all of the developable lots that we need to figure out what to do with. Then there's the habitat lots, and across the street is the Waitt Drive lot that we need to still determine what we're going to do. I had this slide in because people didn't like the next slide, Erica, because it was too detail-oriented, but nevertheless, this is the same slide, but with a lot more detail. So it's Amelia along the bottom, all the Amelia Drive businesses, which the Waitt Drive lots back up to. Then it's got the dorm, the developable lots, the habitat, and the town-owned lot on the other side of the road. And then there's your 48 parking spaces that go, you can see them, the hash marks there that extend down Waitt Drive. So that's Waitt Drive. Now Ticcoma, so there's, as I said, there's 9 lots between Fairgrounds and Waitt Drive on Ticcoma. One's developed, so there's 8 lots left that that we would propose to develop at some point in time for town employee housing. We have a very, about a year ago, we asked Emeritus Development to give us a schematic. What do you think we could do here? And what you see here is 4 duplexes in the middle, flanked by, on each side by 2 single-family homes. The duplexes are 2-bedroom units. The single-family homes are 3 bedrooms each. So that's, across this plan, there'd be 20 bedrooms and 30 off-street parking spots. So let me just go ahead on to the next slide, please, for a second. I'll just give you one more little view of this. So the top part is the same as the previous slide, but I thought you might like to see the street elevation and how, sort of the neighborhood feel that it creates. So you have the smaller 3-bedroom homes flanking on both sides and the larger, somewhat larger duplexes in the middle. This is just an alternative. We intend to come to you with several other alternatives, both for Ticcoma and for Waitt Drive. So that's sort of the story for the buildable lots on Ticcoma and Waitt. So you can advance the slide. So just changing gears a little bit to kind of bring together everything that we've been talking about thus far. So since 2004, we've built the public safety building, we've added the fire station, Waitt Drive was completed, we added the parking. I haven't talked about the acquisition of 7 Amelia because it's not technically speaking part of that original plan, but 7 Amelia was purchased with town funds, affordable housing trust funds, and CPC funds. And that became, that lot is where that connector road that I referred to earlier is now positioned between Waitt and Amelia. There's another 5,000 square feet left on that lot that will be developed by the Affordable Housing Trust for housing. We also have the agreement on Ticcoma Green. We've got that design of the seasonal dorm very nearly complete. We expect to be in it next spring. We've begun to work on bringing you multiple housing design options for Ticcoma and Waitt. We've got the charging stations just out here. We've got the NERDA bus shelter just behind us, and Habitat and Housing Nantucket have developed those lots that I referenced earlier. So that's what's done. If you could just advance the slide, please, Erica. So things that we wanted to flag that we thought were still unfunded opportunities for the select board, that support the select board strategic plan. Yes, the housing, we've talked about that. The design for 8 Waitt Drive, pardon the typo there, it's just 8 Waitt Drive, not 82, Is that going to be open space? Is it going to be recreation? Is it going to be additional housing? Something that we need to contemplate. Obviously, the construction of the central municipal building, we've talked about that a lot over the years. Libby referred to the public safety auxiliary building. Improve and expand parking, as Leslie flagged and showed you, the parking is a little bit of a mess up at 2 Fairgrounds. Optimize park and ride with NERDA. Install additional charging stations and improve traffic circulation around Amelia, Waitt, Ticcoma. So one last slide on what we're focusing on out of sort of the information that we've been giving you thus far. So there's 2 things really. Housing and parking is what town admin intends to focus on immediately. So we spend an enormous amount of time on housing, and we know it's important to you guys and to the select board, and it's important to us, and we want to get it right. And so what we're doing is 6 of us, I think 6 of us, have been working on a town employee housing survey. And the purpose of the survey is to find out what we need to build. Like, so how much demand is there for by town employees for housing? What kind of housing do they want? What are they willing to live in? Where are they willing to live? Are they willing to have a town employee as a roommate? Are they willing to share a duplex with a town employee? We've got to get that information and get it as accurate as we can so that we know what to build. In parallel, we need to take a look at not only our Ticcoma lots, the Waitt lots, but other areas, other town-owned lots. So Orkawa, we have some property. Bartlett, we have property. We have some other opportunities. And come take the information from the survey and map it to the opportunities that we have. Come back to you, to the select board, and iterate a plan to develop, a comprehensive plan to develop the town employee housing. So that's kind of where we're going with this from the housing perspective. And then the final thing that we're going to work on, alluded to earlier, is reviewing the parking plan for 2 Fairgrounds, Waitt, and Ticcoma. That all becomes increasingly more important as we think about putting more houses on there. And by managing, I think we mean sort of improving the parking, figuring out how to manage it better on a day-to-day basis, and how maybe even to enforce it. And we'll be working with public safety and with the transportation director on that. And I think that's where I'm going to stop. We'll stop for tonight. We can take any questions.
Dawn? Dawn's had her hand up for a while.
I wanted to start by addressing 82 Waitt. In many of our conversations in the past, we'd talked about the idea of reserving that as open space and possibly partnering with either the land bank or CPC to develop it. And I think that as we build out the rest of this, and I fully support all of the housing initiatives that are underway, and the plan to go forward with that, I think that really could be a very important component to the neighborhood, particularly with the apartments and the seasonal dormitory and possibly another seasonal dormitory, to make it a fully functional place to live. And then my other question was actually going to be about parking management, particularly along Waitt Drive, where that's all on-street parking. And I look forward to sort of hearing some more thoughts from public safety on enforcement and how we want to go about managing that going forward. That's all.
Matt?
Yeah, no, I was, Don, you took the words out of my mouth on the park, because I remember that from some of our designs. I'll caution on a survey, when the school did a survey of the teachers for their housing behind the school, I got a call from Dr. Lepre, and he said, geez, I know you're in the housing business, you house a lot of employees, what do you think of the survey we got? And I told him, I said, because it was all, we need a lot of 3-bedroom and we want this and that. And then when they went to do it, no one wanted a 3-bedroom. And what I had warned him is as a department head or as a town, that there's you want to build housing that is good enough that you'd want to live in it, but you also know young people don't need as much. The dorms are one thing, then you need a studio or 1 bedrooms, and you need a certain amount of each. And So I would just, I would just caution you to take the survey as about half of the input,
We were aware of that same feedback about the school survey. Christie's been spearheading the construction of the survey, and it's pretty in-depth, and we know we need to tease out the difference between what you want and what you need.
Yeah.
And so that is our goal in doing the survey. So thank you for that, Don.
Yeah, no, I think that, and then I think from my view, I think this is a great first step. I think we're going the right direction. The neighborhood one, if it's gonna be a real neighborhood, it needs to be consistent. The houses need to be at the same level, and the parking needs to be hidden. We have to follow built with Nantucket in mind, and sort of, I think we're heading that way by starting this process. I think long-term, I can't imagine that the highest and best use is gonna be a 70-something parking lot for 70-something trucks or something. I think eventually that we're gonna, as a town, second or third phase, we're gonna want to have, other housing. We're gonna wanna build a town building here. Maybe there's some shared parking in the evenings like happens now. But I don't think that the highest and best use is going to be, free parking out here at, so I think, and the other, the other thing I've always thought about is the backside of if the police and fire are eventually gonna have to house, some of their employees, I think one way to do that is on the backside. So the homes that are across the street are not looking right into the back of the police station, the fire station. I think there's a chance for row housing there. In Colorado and Aspen, they've built a beautiful building that their young firemen are in, and they have their own rooms, but they've got a beautiful starter building there. Something like that may be an opportunity along the back of that property as well. And that would from a design perspective, that would bring houses to the street and make that, a real neighborhood. So those are my sort of quick thoughts, and I'm glad that we're working on this.
Anybody else? Thanks to everybody for a thorough presentation. Really appreciate it. And for me, it's good to know we have the raw resource to develop for really important community needs. So, okay. Next up is a report from I'm going to take number 2 first. Right after we appointed the subcommittee, Matt reached out and said because he had been working with one of the proposal groups that he didn't think it was best for him to be on, so he
I resigned.
He resigned very quickly, and Malcolm stepped up and took his place, so we just need to reaffirm that, accept Matt's resignation and appoint Malcolm, and if I could have that motion.
Motion to approve Malcolm to take over for Matt on the STR subcommittee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb? Don Holgate? Tom Dixon?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Malcolm, that was a reluctant yes, I can hear it.
And I'll just, the reason there was 1 or 2 comments sort of the next night that I received, and people were like, well, if you're doing that, what are you going to be on here for? And I said, well, I don't even want to have the, sort of the appearance of a conflict. I think I would have been fine and I could have done it, but I didn't even want to have the appearance of a conflict, so that's why I stepped down.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, is there a report, Tom? Tom is chairing this group, so we have on the agenda every week from now until special town meeting, I think probably an update on this item, or at least until we adopt the warrant, so.
Yeah, just a few general comments on the process. So we started on Monday night in person, and then we did last night online for several hours. We kind of laid out goals. Everyone did an intro. The 3 zoning article, citizen warrant article petitioners each have 2 representatives for folks in the public who may not have been watching the meetings. And then there are 3 general bylaw citizen warrant article petitioners as well. And so we started with introduction and goals and some generalities about the process. And the upshot of the whole reasoning behind it is to try and find consensus as much as possible with the warrant articles, and maybe do some fixes here and there, maybe come out with a collaborative article that we could sponsor, maybe. And so we went through several things on Monday night, and last night we dipped into more specifics. One of the citizen warrant article petitioners had done a list. There were 13 bullet points on zoning particularly. We went through those, and we were sort of calling our put aside for the moment the parking lot. And so we put a bunch of things in there. Some of them need to be looked at by town council and kind of get some clarity on how they would work legally, specifically the zoning piece around whether it would be a Y or an A in the use chart, things like that. And so I think we'll be moving, hopefully, the ball down the field as we plow through more of these specifics in the articles and hopefully getting to consensus. I got to say for myself, I'll let Malcolm also jump in, that I was heartened or just very happy to see that everyone came to the table, the two representatives, which are Charity Benz and Matthew Peel, Stephen Cohen and Stephen Morey, and Grant Sanders and Jim Sulzer for the 3 zoning articles. And then there's some overlap on and another general bylaw. We didn't even get there yet. We still have several meetings more to come for that. But very happy to see that everyone came in good faith and willing to discuss so far. And we've covered a bunch. We still have a lot to go on a very tight time frame. Obviously, the warrant will close. And so we have a meeting tomorrow night. We have 2 next week. I think Erica's going to put up a placeholder for an additional meeting, maybe for public comment. Malcolm and I also decided today, for any members of the public, that originally we were going to do 2 meetings and then public comment. And we've decided, with feedback from especially the 3 zoning article, citizen warrant article petitioners, that we would plow through for the next couple nights and then public comment on our last set meeting for the moment. We have a lot to go, and it's not that we don't want public feedback or certainly anything like that. It's just 2 hours to cover some of these complicated zoning pieces is not a lot. And we haven't even, like I said, we haven't even gotten to the general bylaw provisions yet. So our thanks to all the citizen warrant article petitioners to coming to the table in good faith and be willing to discuss and try and find consensus.
Malcolm, anything else?
I agree. I mean, my only concern is the time. I'm not sure we have enough time. That's why I'm sure the public will be upset that we may have limited their comments, but we just won't get finished unless we have that extra time. So if we have to have a special meeting just for public comment, we'll have a special meeting just for public comment.
I think that's a smart move, because I think then when the public does comment, if you have, because I think you've reached sort of rough consensus on 3/4 of it or something. There's some tough things to sort still, but I think there's rough consensus on a good number of things. And so it would be better, I think, to have the public comment, once you have more finalized, and then you aren't, going backwards. I think you made it's a hard decision to say that, but I think you guys have made the right decision. So, and I think the public, if they've been watching, the ones that have been watching will understand why. And I think we'll be able to make informed suggestions, informed comments later. So
We'll have public comment, I'm sure, at meetings later, at our board meetings later, when we're talking about whatever warrant, if we have a warrant sponsored by our town.
And there's going to be a planning board, and there's going to be
There's going to be
FinCom, and here again. So it's, yeah.
And then, of course, we have town meeting. There will be lots of public comments, so.
I have attended both meetings, and I have been impressed by the openness and willingness to listen on all parties and to ask each other questions and to clarify and to not just take the positions that have sort of been established in the debate to date. And I think there's some interesting proposals on zoning language that are new, that's not just the same old thing, that I think have great possibility. And I want to remind the community that attending or watching these meetings is the best way to educate yourself in preparation for special town meeting, because this process and the talk about goals and common goals and the why of the different approaches and what folks are trying to accomplish has really become much more open and clear in the last 2 nights than it's been in the last 4 years. And I encourage everyone, as a way to educate yourselves already in preparation for town meeting, to get a lot of background information by watching this process unfold, because this is how legislation is made, through discussion and compromise. It's the most effective way to get to something that will be acceptable to the 2/3 threshold on the zoning side that we need to get to as a community to get this, a version of this on the table, passed, to live into it, and end this stage of this process of figuring it out for our community. So please watch. It's been really great.
What you wanted to say was clarify, not vilify.
Did I say vilify?
Well, no, I'm using vilify because
Okay.
that's what's been happening.
Yeah.
People have been making villains out of each other without listening.
Right.
I think the good thing that people are doing is they're listening to each other and they're
100%.
respecting each other, and that has been, a good change. I think, Tom, you have been a lot. Your demeanor is part of that, and I think it's helpful. So.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who's participated. Are there any other committee reports?
Do you see that somebody at counties are hearing this?
Oh, I wasn't planning to take public comment on this tonight. Okay, no other committee reports?
Just, a quick comment on the earlier PFAS thing. I hope we get a comment on that, because when I was thinking about it after, and we did have one of the reports that we had a study talked about, how dangerous the turnout gear was, and how it had to be washed separately, and they weren't supposed to do this and that with it. So I think that is, it would be interesting for us to get that info back.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Great. And our final item on the agenda is the public hearing to consider the appeal of the Nantucket Preservation Trust of Historic District Commission approval of Certificate of Appropriateness, whoa, I'm tired, number HDC 2023-11-9542, to demolish the dwelling Meridian, in quotation marks, at 29 Commercial Wharf, map 42.2.4, parcel 3. And I'd love, please, to have town council just remind us of our mandate and our purview in this. First, please. Thank you. Mr. Pucci?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is George Pucci from KP Law. I'm joining you from a town hall in another municipality. Can you hear me okay? I don't know about my connection.
Perfectly clear.
Great. So on an appeal, before the select board pursuant to the HDC's enabling legislation, you are to adjudicate basically the HDC decision on review. Your discretionary authority in that review is fairly limited. You are limited to a tough standard that the HDC's decision has to be legally untenable or otherwise arbitrary and capricious. You're not to substitute your judgment for that of the HDC if you find that there was sufficient evidence on the record to support their decision. Even though you might disagree with it, you would have to find it arbitrary and capricious in order to overturn them. There are a couple of issues on this, and I'll let the appellant speak and the certificate holder speak in response to it, Madam Chair, but there were a couple of issues that were raised that were sort of legal issues before you reached that substantive issue of whether the commission's decision was arbitrary and capricious. One was the issue of standing, legal standing of the appellant to appeal the HDC decision and bring that appeal to your board. And the second issue is the issue of mootness. If there was an approved demolition of a structure and that structure has already been demolished and removed, is the appeal now moot? So that in other words, there isn't a live issue for you to adjudicate and send back to the HDC. If there's some type of nuance that, you know, there is further work or a replacement structure or something along those lines, that there is still some live issue for you to adjudicate. And I'll leave that to the appellant to explain to you if there is such a case. But if it's a matter that only the demolition of the structure in question, the propriety of that order allowing that, and the structure has been in fact demolished and removed, you know, in my opinion, in that limited circumstance, the appeal would be moot. In other words, nothing for you to adjudicate substantively because there's no longer a live issue in terms of the demolition and removal of that structure. And again, I'll leave that to the appellant to address to you. I just wanted to give you one preview, and then I'll be quiet and be available to answer any questions. The issue of standing of the entity that brought the appeal, I have to tell you, I do not feel comfortable advising you that the appellant does not have standing to bring this appeal. I know that your board is fairly sophisticated for zoning matters, and often you've been thinking, especially as of late, about zoning appeals and standing in that context. But the historic district, you know, legislation and that context is different from a zoning appeal. Where a zoning appeal, you need some type of like personal aggrievement, such as an abutter that, you know, is facing somebody violating a setback or something like that. The issues that are involved in the enabling legislation for the HDC are of a different nature. And the thing that's most closely analogous would be you have your own special legislation for the HDC's enabling legislation, but there's Chapter 40C, which is the state historic district act that other communities have their local historic district commissions under. That statute actually specifies that nonprofit entities, you know, such as the one that's bringing the appeal before you, actually do have standing within the interests that are protected by the, you know, the State Historic District Act. So, you know, in my opinion, short of a court adjudication saying that an entity such as the appellant does not have standing to maintain this appeal before you, I would recommend that you err on the side of finding that they do have standing to bring this appeal, hear the substantive merits of their appeal, and go ahead and rule on that. And again, only if the issue is not moot. If the issue is moot, then I would recommend that you dismiss the appeal as moot without reaching any other questions, because you want to take issues one step at a time and not adjudicate things that are not necessarily before you. So that's quite a mouthful that I gave you, but this is an appeal somewhat out of the ordinary than the ones that you normally have, that you're just determining whether the decision was arbitrary and capricious.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board in terms of the process part of this before we open to the appellant? Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the appellant, represented by Mary Bergman from Nantucket Preservation Trust, to tell us.
Sure. My name is Mary Bergman. I'm the Executive Director of the Nantucket Preservation Trust, which is, the Attorney Pucci said, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation of Nantucket's architectural history. That in Montgomery versus Nantucket, it does state that organizations dedicated to historic preservation, that person aggrieved within a historic district includes organizations dedicated to historic preservation, and legislature recognized that these persons and entities have a legitimate interest and a right to be heard to protect the historic integrity of those neighborhoods. So I would hope you would agree that we do have the standing here. I do, just trying to answer the questions in order. This structure was demolished on March 14th, 2024, and the certificate of appropriateness was filed on March 15th, 2024, which was the day after it was demolished. So it was impossible for my organization to appeal this structure while it was still standing because it was demolished before the certificate was filed with the town clerk. But the bulk of my, that's why, okay, I'll keep going. Effectively, MPT has filed this appeal because we believe that the HDC's vote in December 5th, 2023, allowing for the demolition of the cottage at 29 Commercial Wharf, formerly known as Meridian Cottage, was arbitrary because the HDC did not follow their own guidelines. There are guidelines in Building with Nantucket in mind that state that there has to be a hearing to discuss the historic integrity of a structure, determine whether or not it is a significant structure. You've heard that term before in these kinds of cases. A significant structure is one that is defined as any building on the island over 50 years old or older, which is either associated with one or more historic figures or events, or with broad island architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history, or is historically or architecturally significant either by itself or in the context of other buildings. So had there been such a hearing, you would have heard that this cottage was built in 1955, which is more than 50 years ago. It is what the Park Service calls a contributing structure. I sent you a letter from the National Park Service that came through today that discussed that this was a contributing structure to our National Historic Landmark District, and that this structure marks an important shift in the development of the island's mid-century resort economy and the transformation of the waterfront from an industrial backyard into the tourist destination that it is today. This structure, along with all of the commercial wharf, was owned, all the wharves, except for Old North Wharf, was owned by Walter Beinecke Jr., Sherburne Associates. The development of Nantucket's waterfront for tourist use is of national importance. It's something that has been recognized by President Ronald Reagan, by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Boston Society of Architects, and the history of historic preservation on Nantucket is now historic in its own right. I think this is something that people are grappling with. What this means is that the history of the preservation movement and the people associated with it, like Walter Beinecke, are in our landmark designation. Preservation is part of our National Historic Landmark status, the same as the history of tourism and whaling. And the Park Service defines the history of the preservation movement on Nantucket as happening between 1955 and 1975. So that's why the end of our landmark period of significance is 1975. That's not an arbitrary date. That's a date that marks the final piece of the regulatory framework that governs preservation on Nantucket, which was extending the HDC's jurisdiction over the whole island. So we know the structure was built more than 50 years ago. We know it's associated with someone of local national significance. It's to be understood in this context of the wharf. I would argue the structure is significant, but the determination was made by the HDC because there was no hearing without a proper hearing to determine if the structure was significant or not. How could the decision be anything other than arbitrary? So I think that this demolition, as I explained to you, the structure was demolished before the certificate was filed. This matters because this is not the first contributing structure that's come before the HDC where a proper hearing was not held, and it's not the first contributing building that's been demolished before an appeal could be heard. This has happened other times. I know that's not true. Well, anyway, the demolition process at the HDC is deeply flawed, and it's clear that the Park Service agrees with me per the letter that I sent on to the Select Board this afternoon. If we continue down this path, if you say that this is just moot, are we just going to be rewarding people for not maintaining and repairing their properties? And anyone watching will learn that it doesn't matter if a structure is demolished without a certificate of appropriateness. Are we just going to shrug and say that there's no recourse? I worry that without intervention from the Select Board, the integrity of our landmark will continue to erode, and our economy relies on our landmark status. I don't love those downward trends from the Visitor Center. NPT is asking you to remand this to the HDC, and we're asking that you require the HDC to follow their guidelines as it relates to this application and future demolition applications. So that's that.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from the George, should we hear from the HDC or from the certificate holder?
The HDC is on.
Totally up to you. Yep, totally up to you.
Okay, so I'll hear from the HDC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ray Pohl, the former chairman of the Historic District Commission. Stephen Welch is the current chair. Stephen, I believe, would like to speak on this, so I'm not going to, I'm going to try not to repeat what I believe he's going to talk about. And I know Rick Bodette, as the applicant's rep, wants to talk as well. One thing I do want to sort of rebut or add to in terms of what Mary just told you was this is coming from Appendix C of Building with Nantucket in Mind, which concerns our demolition policies. And this has to do with the definition of, quote, significant structures. It says, any structure within the historic district of Nantucket Island, which is in whole or in part 50 years or more old, and which is, here's my underlined portion, which or has been designated by the commission to be a significant structure after the finding by the commission that the building is either, and then Mary's language takes over. So the reason I read that is because it is at the discretion of the HDC board to determine whether something is significant. Simply because it is more than 50 years old does not automatically make it significant. The board in this case, and in other cases, has reviewed the history of the building. We heard all about the fact that Beinecke did own it. You know, I would question, well, okay, everything that Walter Beinecke owned is now, you know, preserved indefinitely. So I think it's wonderful that Walter, you know, had this building for a while. He did knock down some Victorian houses to make way for this building. So, I mean, there is that sort of irony in this whole thing. But what we reviewed was this cottage sat on a bulkhead made of stone that was in desperate need of repair. And because it sat on that stone, which was falling down and that they wanted to repair on Commercial Wharf, the building itself was falling down. So the first approval that we issued was to move off because it was a charming small building. And so in the interest of reuse, recycle, we thought, okay, if anybody wants to take this and move it to another site, that would be great. By the way, part of this whole application process involved us approving the moving of Mickey Rowland's equally, you know, quaint, wonderful building across the street to this parcel. So after the bulkhead had been repaired. So I believe that work may have been done already. So I know Rick and Stephen want to talk, but I just did want to say that one thing that was missing from Mary's sort of review was the fact that our board are the people that determine what is a significant structure. And in this case, we felt that it did not rise to that level. And therefore, we stand behind our decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Stephen?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's as cold down here as it is during HCC meetings. I guess what I'd like to find out, well, first of all, I'm here tonight representing the interest of the majority of the vote and the processes of the commission. In that regard, I'd like to determine where the board stands on the matter of standing. I understand that that is not delineated, that the criteria for that is not delineated within our special act, which precedes the Chapter 40 HDC commissions across the Commonwealth. I'm not an attorney, but I think it would behoove us to understand whether they're standing in your mind. And more importantly, I think your position on whether this hearing is moot or not before I weigh in. Or if you prefer, I'll weigh in. I just kind of keying off what town council suggested. Thank you.
Is there any opinion from the board? Matt?
I believe we just heard Mr. Pucci tell us that we should be conservative and say that they're standing.
Yeah.
So I believe there is standing, and I believe we should listen to what you have to say to decide if it's moot myself.
I would.
You gonna?
I'm sorry. I'd like to hear the arguments. I mean, I don't want to stop now. I can't make my decision without I hear all the information.
Dawn?
I agree with Matt. I believe that we should proceed with the hearing.
Great, thanks. So we will proceed. Go ahead,
Okay, thank
Stephen.
you. I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that. So the appellant asserts that a couple of things, the HCC arbitrarily disregarded the town's preservation planner, and the HCC did not follow our demolition policy. On the first point, I want to note a couple of things. As Ray, who chaired this particular hearing, mentioned a little bit differently, the HCC is the sole local authority having jurisdiction, period, end of sentence. That's just the way the act is written. That's the purpose of the elected officials and the appointed officials to serve when an elected official cannot. Number two, let's see, except in exceptional cases, individual mid-century structures are not the grounds for an award to the National Historic Register. An award, let's see here. Sorry, I prepared these this evening. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to even show up, so I've been busy up in the back. The award to place a structure on the National Historic Register requires two thresholds. One is intactness and integrity. I'm not going to go through the 7 criterion. There are 7 criterion. The other is significance. That's the second of 2 thresholds. Each threshold needs to be met. That includes 4 criterion. I'm not going to go through those. They've been mentioned. They parallel to some extent what makes what can the HCC considers as thresholds in determining the significance of a structure. The HCC did not follow, back up a second here. So during the hearing, the HCC considered the testimony that was presented, and it determined that these structures, this structure was not a protected structure. So that segues into the next point, which the appellate asserts that the HCC did not follow our demolition policy, which is labeled Appendix C of Building with Nantucket in mind. There are two characteristics of relevance. One is intent. The intent is to prevent unnecessary demolition of protected structures. A protected structure is a significant structure, critical element the commission determines is in the public's interest to preserve. By virtue of the vote to allow demolition, after conducting the required public hearing and deliberating on testimony from the preservation planner, from the Historic Structures Advisory Group, the HCC determined that 29 Commercial Wharf was not architecturally, historically, or culturally significant structure deserving of protected status. The standards for approval of a definition address only protection of a protected structure. This structure was not determined to be a protected structure. Therefore, the standard of retaining the structure as outlined within Appendix C, the HCC's demolition policy was not met. I think I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Mr. Bodett, did you want to make some remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rick Bodette for Nantucket Boat Base and the owner of 29 Commercial Wharf. Let me first apologize for addressing my letter to the former chair. That was written before the change, so my apologies. In any event, I did want to say, I did submit a letter, I hope you all saw it. I did want to say, and I won't go into it in the interest of time, that just for the record, we disagree that this appellant has standing, but I understand town council's opinion, and I understand it's not something you want to discuss now. And so with that, I do want to address a couple of things substantively and with respect to the issue of mootness. First of all, the HDC's decision is supported by the evidence presented. They made a deliberated, reasonable decision. And of course, as Mr. Pucci intimated, there may be an issue of mootness here, which I want to address. I'm glad Mr. Pucci went into a discussion of the standard involved here, because that was something I was going to address. I do want to make a couple of quick points in addition to what he said. It is a very high standard, arbitrary and capricious. Having worked for the court system, I reviewed a lot of decisions and drafted a lot of decisions relative to administrative appeals. I can tell you that every single court case in Massachusetts that gives an opinion of arbitrary and capricious says two things in particular. One, you're supposed to give deference to the decision-making body, in this case, the HDC. And why do they do that? Because they do it every day. They're the ones that make the decisions. They know better than people who review their decisions what they do on a daily basis. The second thing is something that Mr. Pucci mentioned, and that's that you're not supposed to substitute your judgment for the HDC on a substantive matter. And essentially what that means is that you may hear the same evidence the HDC heard. You may have made a different decision. That's not enough. You need to find that the HDC did something wrong. They acted arbitrarily, capriciously, and that means they were whimsical. They didn't hear the evidence. They didn't consider the evidence. And so in this case, that's not the case. They didn't act arbitrarily or capriciously. They listened to the evidence. The minutes show a clear deliberation about the historic history of the structure, about the integrity of the structure, and they deliberated and made a vote to allow the demolition. And so we think you should uphold the HDC's decision on that basis from a substantive matter. Now, with respect to the issue of mootness, we think you should deny the appeal, uphold the HDC just on the issue of mootness as well, because the house is no longer there. The only thing I would take issue with what Ms. Bergman said is that we demolished a house without a certificate of appropriateness from the HDC. It was issued. It was decided in December 2023. It was issued, meaning filed with the town clerk on Friday, I think the 15th of March. We received our building permit to demolish the structure on the 13th of March and demolished it the next day. So the idea that we would have demolished a structure without a permit is completely untrue. In fact, this has been a 2-year process. We went to the planning board to get permission for this, the Conservation Commission. We amended our Chapter 91 license with the Department of Environmental Protection, went to the HDC, got a building permit, took down the house. So we did exactly what we were allowed to do, and we followed the procedure in place. And so I will say, and I'm going to wrap this up, I know it's been a long hearing, but I will say that if the purpose of this appeal by Ms. Bergman is really to shed light on an otherwise imperfect process of demolishing structures at the HDC, honestly, as a resident, that's something that I think is a worthwhile discussion. I think that's something that all of us could support, maybe getting a better process in place, but this is not the mechanism to do that. And this is not the venue to do that. And it's completely unfair to my client to drag us into an appeal on something we've already been allowed to and permitted to demolish and have demolished it for the purpose of having an overarching process discussion with the town. So, we hope you'll uphold the HDC's decision and deny the appeal, and I'm certainly available for any questions you have.
Thanks, Rick. Any questions from the board for any of the people who've presented, or is the board prepared?
Yeah, I move to close the hearing.
I've got a couple questions on it.
Well, then I will withdraw my motion.
Yeah, if that's fine.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, is the certificate of appropriateness, is that, this is, I guess, probably Mr. Pucci question, does that have to be filed for someone to be noticed that this is, that, to make an appeal? That's a, Mr. Pucci, or?
Right, not, it's very unclear under the act. You know, the many years ago, we started, town council started advising, because of the way the legislation is written, you know, to file with the town clerk some type of decision so that, you know, it would trigger an appeal deadline.
Right.
And that was really, you know, why we recommended that, but the statute is pretty unclear, you know, as to, it just says, such appeal shall be taken within 10 days of the filing by the commission of its certificate of determination with the clerk of the town of Nantucket.
Right,
So,
So we
You
have
know-
a
you know,
process in
it's-
place, and it actually states that once the certificate of determination is filed with the town clerk, that starts the clock. Any appellant needs to file an appeal within 10 calendar days of the filing date of the COA.
But if somebody,
Or the
but if
certificate of
somebody,
determination.
but if somebody gets a demolition permit and knocks it down before you've even filed the appeal, then how does somebody know to, you know, appeal? Like, that's my question.
Well, this is the third such appeal where I think there've been similar cases.
And that's what I'm sort of bringing to light, because, you know, I kind of vowed when 106 Main Street was knocked down, you know, I was promised that this would be taken care of and this would never happen again, and here we are again. So that's why I'm frustrated. If sitting in my position, this seems like, you know, this seems like catch-22. Up is down and down is left is right. You can file appeal, but the building's gone, so the appeal doesn't matter. But you can't file because it hasn't been filed yet. I just feel like there's a process here that is not working, and I believe you that this was not done, you know, in a bad manner. You spent 2 years and put a lot of time into it, but I also feel like there's something missing here. I feel like something's not connecting. I don't know. Can you help
Madam
me,
Chair, I can
Holly?
address that.
So do you have a specific question?
That was the question. He answered my question about
Okay.
what happens, and it didn't seem like it happened.
Okay. I want to, so I'd like us to stay focused on what's in front of us rather than process, because I think that's another conversation. I realize, Matt, the frustration in that, but at the moment, the question before us is about either whether or not this is moot and we should deny the appeal based on mootness, or whether there's arbitrary and capricious. And I understand we need to have more conversation about this question of
Point of
process.
order,
So,
Madam Chair. This has occurred at a couple different hearings where the select board weighs into the process of a separate elected board under a special enabling act. And I think it's inappropriate to use an HDC term. And I mean that with respect, but that is a point of order. I'm calling that because it keeps coming up. Let's have a discussion about the HDC process. The HDC is the
Stephen,
authority
that is
for
exactly what I just said, excuse me.
But what I'm
Okay,
talking.
gentlemen,
I'll put my hand up.
thank you. Matt?
Yeah, my point is that it isn't just about the process. It's the fact that we've got something in place here that made this possible. And if you know, if you, how do I say it? Go to someone else and I'll put my words together. but
Matt,
it's-
I understand what you're saying, but it does not relate to the question before us.
Madam Chair,
directly.
it's literally a 10-second answer to plug this. It's done.
Okay.
Matt, what's happened is it's an artifact of COVID. What was happening is decisions were being made, and then at a later date, once the paperwork was processed, the documents were taken to the town clerk. That has changed. When a decision is made, it is taken to the town clerk. The 10 days starts very close to the date that the approval was made. So there isn't this lag, which has occurred with a few of the priors.
Okay.
That's all.
I'm gonna stop the conversation about process, and I want to focus this discussion on the matter before us. Dawn?
I definitely have my own thoughts on the decision, but before we close the public hearing, are you going to take public comment?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, just because somebody has their hand up. And I don't know if there's anybody in the audience, but I agree that we do need to focus on whether this was an arbitrary and capricious decision. And I mean, also, we do know the building's already gone, but I would prefer to focus on whether they made a sound decision or not. And I'm glad to hear that the process has been fixed. And I hope that that includes that no building permits will be issued until the appeal period runs out.
Yeah, okay. Again, so I am going to take public comment. Ms. Rayport online?
Yes, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I wanted to make a couple comments. I think Mr. Pucci said that the first thing to tackle is the question of mootness, because if you decide that the topic is moot, then there's really no decision to be made, and he advised that you dismiss the matter. I would argue that the topic is not moot because there are remedies for a building that was raised in violation of the act. So the remedy could be a fine. It could be an order for substantial restoration. With a small building like this, that would certainly be possible. And that's actually defined in the act. Maybe Mr. Pucci could comment on that. And having these provisions, provisions for penalties for raising a building in violation of the act would be pointless if an unlawful raising of a building mooted the proceedings. So I think I know you don't want to talk about the procedures, but I think that these flags that we're seeing that various people have spoken to should really make this board more concerned about whether or not the demolition was proper. Regarding the process, I think that the challenge here has been that it is true the HDC is the authority deciding whether or not the building is contributing to the landmark, but that doesn't give them permission to make a wrong or arbitrary decision. And I didn't listen to the recordings. I'm just going off what's in the packet, which is one meeting on December 5th. And what I see, and what I hope I could point out for you to see if you haven't seen it already, is our preservation planner, who is the only qualified preservation professional advising the HDC from a staff perspective, gave substantial historic information and identified this structure as contributing to our landmark. And I just want to also say that we're a district and a National Historic Landmark. And as you've seen in the Park Service letter, a building does not have to be individually significant. You know, Commissioner Welch mentioned that to find a building significant, you know, to place a building on the register, it has to be individually significant. We're not placing
Ms.
any
Rayport, we're almost at 3 minutes.
We're not placing any buildings on registers here because we have a district and it's a context. So we're preserving a context. So the HDC received substantial information that this building was contributing to the district and therefore preferably preserved. And if you go through and you look at the minutes
Okay, Ms. Rayport?
But, Madam Chair, I have to ask you if I can participate in this public hearing. I'm a professional with history in this area and I have substantial information to share.
Excuse me, one moment. Mr. Pucci, is our 3-minute time limit permitted in a public hearing?
Yeah, it is if you're, you know, if you choose to apply it as chair, you know, you have a lot of discretion to let people go a little over if you choose to.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I could
Ms.
be indulged
Rayport,
because
please
I'm
wait.
addressing
Ms.
a couple
Rayport?
different topics.
Ms. Rayport, please wait to be recognized. I'll give you another minute or so. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you go through and look at the comments that were made that are in the minutes, what you don't see is a discussion of the historic criteria. So you see a discussion, you know, Mr. Welch says there's disagreement with the idea of structures from the 1960s and 70s being automatically considered contributing. No one's arguing with that. This is considered contributing because of the history that was provided by the preservation planner. And it's, Ms. Oliver says, just because the building is significant, it doesn't prevent it from being taken down and replaced with a neighboring structure. Well, I would say that you have to have a reason to decide that the building is, at no point in these minutes has anybody said, we recognize the history, we recognize the reports, but here is why it's not significant. At no point in this record has anybody said, here's why it's not significant. What they've said is it's falling apart. They've said they like the other structure better. And you also have Mr. Welch saying, emphasize the need to focus on whether the structure itself possesses historic characteristics that justify its retention, which is true, but that was not discussed. So in closing, I don't see the commissioners exercising a well-informed duty to identify why they would disagree with the preservation planner. And I see substantial information coming from the Nantucket Preservation Trust and the Park Service to say that in fact,
Can you wrap up, Ms. Rayport?
I'm wrapping up,
please?
thank you. That in fact, their conclusion was arbitrary. Just because they made it, if they didn't base it on facts, which they are enumerated in the minutes, it is arbitrary and wrong, and they made a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Holly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Holly Backus, for the record. While the commission's obviously determination and their approval is contrary to my comments, I wanted to basically kind of clarify a couple of things. One, they did receive approval through staff, pretty much conditions, meaning they made their decision on January 5th with these conditions outlined. The process part, to Matt's point, we did not file it at the town clerks because we didn't have those conditions provided. That is something that we're working on, of basically having it so there is a due process, so somebody can, we can have the decision filed at the town clerk and the due process is provided. The sequence of events pretty much happened because I received their concurrence that they would do what the commission asked for to salvage the structure's internal compartments and pieces and whatnot. Instead of providing that to staff right after the meeting, it was done right until they wanted to get their building permit. So process-wise, I wanted to mention we're trying to rectify that, right? This moving forward from this instance. But yes, it because of this, it does not give people their due process.
Okay, Holly, let's.
I just wanted
I'm
to
trying
mention
not
that.
to stray
Yep.
into process.
Yep, no,
Okay,
I
thanks.
process. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, great. Rick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to respond to a couple of things that Ms. Rayport mentioned, specifically with respect to mootness. It is moot because there is literally no remedy this board or the HDC or any court in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts could fashion that would bring this house back. Impossible. That's what makes it moot. And the section of the act that Ms. Rayport references is misplaced. It does in fact say that if you unlawfully tear down a structure, you could be required to put it back. That didn't happen. We lawfully took down the structure. We had a permit. We went through all the permitting process to get those permits, and we took down the structure. And if we didn't have the permits, we wouldn't have. So it's moot, and all we did is what we were allowed to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stephen, briefly?
Yeah, super briefly. Thank you, Madam Chair. One, the HCC made an informed decision. The minutes support that, as do the tapes. I note those decisions were based on facts presented by the preservation planner, our own diligence in reviewing the history, and obviously the minutes are not a complete record of the proceedings. Secondarily, well, actually, probably more important, before the public hearings closed, I would ask your indulgence. I'd like to get clarification on the Select Board's authority to have a remand that includes directing future actions of a separate elected board with respect to other applications. Thank you.
That's speculative as far as I know. There's no, I think that's a question for town council.
Yes, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, that's what I was asking. The only reason I ask is because the appellant asserts that that is what you should find.
Okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Mary, one last comment and then.
Make a comment. Thank you. I have a couple of objections, just to correct the record facts. That no Victorian structure was demolished on Commercial Wharf to build that cottage in 1955. I think what this really comes down to is I do understand that the HCC is the sole authority to determine if structure is significant, preferably preserved, whatever we wanted to call it. But when at this point there is an applicant is not required, there is little standard requiring the applicant to present standardized information across applications to provide the commission with the information that they need to make a decision. Holly Backus is the only one in this instance who is providing that information. It's up, I guess it's up to you. I don't envy you all, and I don't know why these are always at the end of the longest agendas that you have.
Okay, seeing no other public comment at this time, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll do it again, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb?
Aye.
Dawn Holgate?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Well, Madam Chair, I've listened carefully. I've read what I could. I think it's a matter of opinion, and opinion is really not the issue here. I don't feel they acted arbitrarily. People disagree with their decision. The planner may have different opinion, but it's ultimately the board that makes the decision. They made the decision, and I would like to be sympathetic to the people that are objecting to it, but the rules are the rules. I don't believe they're arbitrary. The question of mootness, I guess it's moot. I don't know.
So is there a motion in there?
I move that we deny the appeal.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And uphold the HDC. Is that okay?
Oh,
Erica
yes,
chimed
yes.
in just on a correction on language.
You know,
Okay.
just, sometimes, I don't want to go back to the Board of Health, but sometimes the staff gives us an opinion we don't necessarily like, but we may vote against the staff.
I was just commenting on the language of the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a second from Ms. Holgate. Any comments before we go to a vote that are not about process?
Mine isn't about process. I find it arbitrary. I know where the vote's going to go. I do find it's arbitrary. I find it's inappropriate to issue a demolition and allow a demolition before a structure. And I'm not judging the structure or not. I'm just saying before a appeal period is even started and the appeal period is finished. I think that's that's inappropriate. Okay. So I'm not going to support it.
Okay. So I'm going to go for a vote. Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Dawn Holgate.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
No.
And I vote aye. So that's 4-1 to deny the appeal and uphold the HDC decision. I think that there is a future agenda item of the revised HDC consultant, a report that's coming down the pike, and I think we'll have much more robust conversation around process at that time and be able to have a conversation with the HDC about where they are in process and where things are being improved to the points that we're making on this process side. So thank you, everyone, for lasting through this long meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By roll call, Matt Fee.
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Dawn Holgate.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
There are 2 items next to Libby that need to be signed.